official confirmation from Elections Canada that we don't anticipate that the full results will be known until, sometime overnight, something that will factor into, the overall count at the end of the evening. But the Liberals can still secure the majority even without terrebonne.
Because they just need that one seat.
That's right.
But of course, tight race to begin with, then you have those long ballots.
And
so
true nail-biter.
A lot of counting, exactly.
Yeah, very much so. Okay, let's bring back our strategist. Actually, Scott, I wanted to pick up on the issues that Nick was talking about and how far Trump has fallen in that list from where he was in the minds of Canadians as they cast a ballot last year. It fluctuates for sure, but it does feel like we've gotten used to sort of this instability through Donald Trump, and he isn't taking as direct aim at us at the moment as he is elsewhere. How does that matter politically, do you think? Or does it?
Well, I'm not sure it does, because I would pick up on something else that Nick said. I mean, obviously it does, but to me, the critical question is blame. When people are upset about the cost of living, when they're upset about the price of gas, when they're upset and anxious about jobs and their future, all those issues which we register as, that's not Trump. Trump's now fourth. Are they in fact Trump? Are voters blaming Trump? And as a consequence, it is accruing in a weirdly way toward Mark Carney's political benefit, because people say, well, then now we have to think about who do we trust most to take on this. To me, the spotlight of that is gas prices. I think the reason it's on people's minds is that I had to fill up my gas tank this morning and it was wicked expensive. And people, I think, are blaming the war in Iran and they're blaming Trump. And that takes you back to leadership, which is benefiting Carney. So that dynamic will not last forever. But it seems like it's held for a year. In fact, if you want to look at what the likely results are tonight and the consequence of this past year, Carney is getting stronger as Trump gets weaker. What's happening to Trump domestically? His political position is weakening. This war in Iran has been a disaster for him in terms of popular support in the United States. His position internationally has eroded. People now tell him no to his face, something that didn't happen 8 months ago. So as he weakens, Carney seems to be strengthening in terms of popular appeal, attracting floor crossers, winning by-elections. And that's going to set up one fascinating dynamic for the summer when it comes to renewed trade talks.
How long does that last, though? Because we are entering a critical juncture, right? We're entering into CUSMA, USMCA negotiations. And I think most Canadians at a certain point will want some kind of resolution, some kind of deal.
I don't even know if that's true. I mean, it'd be interesting to ask Nick, but there have been polls that have suggested that Canadians are a little ambivalent about getting a deal right now. I think partially because they were and B, might stink.
It is interesting, though, that the Prime Minister has not suffered any negative consequences for the sort of Trump stuff, insofar as, Shakir, there were self-imposed deadlines set, right? You'll hear it from the opposition all the time. We were going to get a deal in the summer. We were going to get all of these things. We were going to get the tariffs removed. That didn't materialize. And I know the line from the government is certainly, like, compared to other countries, we do have an, quote unquote, okay deal. We have the best of the lot. But it is interesting to me that so far there have not yet been pronounced political consequences to that. What does that tell you about how they're going to navigate the rest of this with Trump?
I think Canadians are giving Mark Carney a pass on Trump just because of how unpredictable he is. I think folks realize that, dealing with him, anything can happen at any given time. So if you can't get a deal immediately, we'll give you a pass. Despite having your own deadline of July of last year, it doesn't really matter. Go on. What bothers me with those numbers as a conservative is that when you see jobs in the economy high, issues number 1 and 2, conservatives usually dominate. And to not see Pierre and conservative numbers kind of rising with those numbers, those issues at the top, it's concerning to me that what's happening there. Why are the conservatives not getting at least a little bump, a little win in their sales when the economy is the number 1 issue? And that, to me, should cause some concern for conservatives as we move forward and see how Pierre kind of manages his leadership in his caucus in the months ahead.
And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but maybe some concern for the NDP as well, Kathleen, that if jobs are such a, inflation and cost of living are so much a concern for Canadians, and that is not correlating with any additional support for New Democrats who talk about cost of living all the time, or conservatives who do the same, like, what does that?
Just saying that as a partisan. I'm saying that because I think actually, Pierre Poilievre is living on borrowed time, right? He not to give him the PM chair. For New Democrats, there's a new leader, Avi Lewis, just elected just a couple weeks ago on March 29th. We have very low expectations for ourselves because we only have 6 seats in the House. So for him, actually, it's only upside. And Mr. Carney has opened an entire left flank for himself by actually not dealing with the bread and butter issues at the kitchen table for Canadians. Those people who are not raking in great profits from oil and gas increases or at the grocery stores or you name it. So there's actually a window of opportunity for the new leader in Avi Lewis to actually make a name for himself and pick away at Carney's left flank that he's largely been ignoring because he's too busy kind of vacuuming up the middle and trying to kind of occupy that center ground to take in progressive conservatives and radical right-wing conservatives into the Liberal House.
The thing is that it's working right now, right? Like, to be fair, your point is right. Theoretically, it looks like there's this huge flank on the left that would be open, and you'd think, for example, Dolly Begum would go there, but instead she's going to the Liberals at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to do a quick time check right now, and it's 8:13 Eastern time. We are roughly 15 minutes away from polls closing, and we start getting those results.
We're going to take a quick commercial break before just that, and before the results start rolling in. We're back in a moment.
All new Scrubs, Wednesday, 7:30, 10 Central.
Welcome back to a CTV News special, Federal By-Elections 2026. We are counting down to polls closing in 3 ridings: Toronto's University of Rosedale, Toronto's Scarborough Southwest, and Terrebonne near Montreal in Quebec.
And the reason that we are counting down to find out what happens in those ridings is because it could make a very big difference in the House of Commons. The Liberals currently hold 171 seats. They won 169, if you think back a year ago, in the general election, but there's been people who have left and a number of people, 5 in fact, who have crossed the floor just since November, leaving them at that 171 seats. They need 172 to form a majority.
If and when the Liberals do win a majority, it will be a slim one. At 172, they will need the Speaker to break a tie in a confidence vote. 173 or 174 would make it a lot more comfortable governing. Let's head over to Sandy Ronaldo and the political panel. It's an interesting, the Speaker's role in all of this, Sandy, of course, because according to parliamentary convention, and forgive me for nerding out here a little bit on politics, but the Speaker...
It's a place to do it.
Exactly, but traditionally the Speaker has signed...
Space, yeah.
Thank you. Traditionally, the Speaker has voted to keep the status quo unless it concerns, a non-confidence motion, for example. Then he would vote with the government. So an interesting. I don't know when we would use this in Trivial Pursuit or Political Trivia, but there you have it. If you need to tell your friends,
maybe tomorrow if they win 172.
Exactly, because there's something to talk about. But Sandy, over to you about this, the size of this majority and why it matters.
Okay, I'm going to call my friends, and the friend I'm going to call first is Nathan Cullen, who's going to come to the table with his perspective as someone who ran for the NDP leadership way back in 2012. Yeah. So what does 172 mean to you?
It's all context. It's to me, I said this a bit before, it's a difference without a lot of distinction in terms of what happens next in Parliament. There's nothing that Mark Carney couldn't have brought to Parliament last week that he can bring now and not have it pass through. So I think it's maybe about expectations management for the Prime Minister. Now you have a majority. Canadians who follow politics will know that that means certain things, but most of us don't nerd out on the regular and know that that now affects committees, and committees can pass legislation. I think there's going to be a bunch of what are called closure motions, just shutting down debate on certain bills. The Prime Minister can, if he chooses, wield a much heavier hand in the House of Commons, because a majority government in Canada is a very powerful thing. Unlike almost any other legislature or parliament around the world, it is a very, very powerful, distinctly powerful in Canada. And the expectations will be to address the things that Canadians are worried about, all those things we've talked about, cost of living, Mr. Trump, and the economy, which is as likely as anything headed towards a recession. He's got some big challenges ahead. We as a country have big challenges ahead, some in our control, some not. I think that's going to be the management of those expectations for Mr. Carney, because now he's got full control if he wins the majority tonight.
Okay, full control, but he still, if he just wins one seat, needs the Speaker to break the tie. So what's he going to do if he gets one seat or two? I mean, two, he's a little more comfortable.
No.
Sure, and the greater the margin, the more durable the majority is. But I actually think that there are some concrete distinctions, and Nathan referred to some of them. Once you do have a majority, there's an ability to have a greater amount of discipline around committees, but that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be relationship building across the House. So who the chair of the committee is will influence the discourse and the debate at committees. I think on the flip side, there's going to be greater expectation on Mr. Carney and the government to then deliver because of the majority threshold, hopefully having been reached a little bit later on tonight. And so what does that mean in practical terms? Well, it means responding to some of the issues which have been identified throughout the course of the evening so far. If inflation continues to go up because of the situation in the Middle East, what will be the government's response? When he first came in, he cut taxes for the middle class. He cut the carbon tax. He introduced a grocery rebate. I mean, that puts cash into the hands of Canadians, into the houses of Canadians. But what's next? What do we do to relieve the pressure at the pump? I also think that there will be expectations to deliver on energy. So with the majority, will there be an ability to revisit some of the legislation or to advance other objectives to get shovels in the ground? What will we do with regards to the Defense Investment Agency? This is the new procurement agency, which is designed to herd all of the different ministries and start getting some of those contracts out so that we can reinvigorate the industrial sector when it comes to defense. What are we going to do with regards to housing? I mean, these are all of the things that are going to be foursquare on the agenda the morning after. And I think that's one of the reasons why we should look forward to what the Prime Minister will have to say sometime tomorrow morning.
Spoken like a true liberal. Okay, James, I want to talk to you about the fact that you're from the West and Nathan is too. The West is going to have to live with results, right? Without having a say. So what does it mean for the West with a majority government in Ottawa? Will this deepen the feeling of Western alienation at a time when we have that Alberta referendum in the works?
Well, I mean, look, I think one of the virtues that you could say about Mark Carney's mandate is that it actually is quite pan-Canadian, it's quite national. So I don't know that there's frankly much of an East-West divide yet, in part because Premier Danielle Smith and the MOU, they're on side, they're showing forward progress. And when you have forward progress with David Eby on certain files, forward progress with Danielle Smith and others, it's good. Progress isn't a final deliverable, so we'll get to there. But I do want to take you up on part of what you said to Marco about 172 and what does it mean going forward. I think probably for the next 6 months, it means that Mark Carney has a tremendous amount of velocity behind his mandate, right? tonight. Parliament sits for 8 more weeks. Those 8 weeks, I think, is an opportunity for him to circumscribe Parliament, maybe put in closure motions to decide what his legislative agenda will be that he wants to brag about in the summer months. It also gives him an opportunity to set the stages with the newly appointed ambassador in Washington, Mr. Wiseman, Janice Charette, our chief negotiator for the CUSMA reconsideration this summer, to have clarity with them and a mission, and to maybe have some opportunity through Parliament to mitigate some of the things that Donald Trump may do with regard to trade. So it puts him in a strong position going into CUSMA. That's good. Going into the fall, though, when the next federal budget comes around, I think that's probably where we're going to see peak Mark Carney, in the sense that we will get through tonight. He'll get his majority. Maybe there'll be a couple more floor crossers. I don't know. But that'll be the weight of the velocity of full steam Mark Carney in the full momentum of what he has. Everybody will have their hand out and high expectations for that fall federal budget. And then out of that will come the spin that he's let people down, he's been disappointing, whatever. And I think that's where you'll see a real shift of the conversation about what now. He will by then have had a full year and a half as prime minister, a clear majority. He had smooth sailing up until now. Now he has a clear majority, no opposition, full weight into a federal budget in the fall. CUSMA is now in the rearview mirror. Donald Trump probably has been mitigated to some degree by the midterms by November. And then where are we at? What's the plan for Canada for 2027, 2028 for an election in 2029? So I think to Kathleen's point a while ago, this is where we're going to be for the next 6 months. But I think 2027 going forward, with Donald Trump having probably lost the midterms and people positioning for the White House, I think the conversation shifts dramatically, and that's an advantage to Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. I think it's an advantage for the NDP to find their voice in a new world. So I think a lot will cascade out of tonight and what it means for 6 months, and then after 6 months and where we're at as a country.
So what I'm hearing is a short-term honeymoon period, but then that'll be in the past at some point.
Well,
everything changes.
It was said earlier, Canadians have given Mr. Carney, and understandably because of these stresses, this first year, change things, undo things Mr. Trudeau did. Mr. Poilievre hasn't wanted an election, neither has the NDP. That has softened somewhat the criticisms and the role of the opposition. And a good opposition should be pressing the government. Right. That's going to maybe change tonight in about
I'm all
5
for
more
extending
minutes.
The honeymoon. I mean, we should have the honeymoon extend.
But it's not real life, Marco. The honeymoon is wonderful. You sleep in, but at some point, real life kicks in, and you got to make the kids breakfast. That's
okay. All right. I'm not sure who I'm throwing to, but take it away.
I'm curious to get both of your takes actually on this rebranding that we've been seeing recently of Pierre Poilievre, right? And if we're going to see another pivot after today. We've seen obviously the physical makeover, the physical rebranding, but also in recent months, a softening on the message. Graham, let me start with you. Does it surprise you that he hasn't got more of a bump as a result of that?
Well, it doesn't surprise me because he's losing caucus. Like, you can rebrand all you want, but if you can't hold your own party together, you're dead. It's untenable. So he's got to get those MPs to come back.
Trudeau can tell you all about that.
Trudeau can tell you all, exactly. Christopher Freeland, right? So that doesn't surprise me. I wanted to quickly pick up on what Scott said, and I think a few others. What is not normal here? In Montreal, on the floor of the convention, the largest cheers by Liberals, by far, the largest standing ovations, were about pro-Canadian / anti-American movements by the government of Canada and by the Liberal Party. Standing ovations, loud cheers, 70 cents on the dollar is no longer going to the United States. Another small thing that says a lot, post-Iran war. I had to give my head a shake. There I see the Prime Minister of Canada with all the leaders of Europe in a statement talking about the war in Iran. Now, that makes sense because we weren't in, but it's just odd to see that, he talks about being closer to like-minded countries with values that are similar to Canada's. And he talks about, whether it's Sweden, whether it's UK, whether it's Germany, and then we see it implemented. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. And if you're Pierre Poilievre, to your question, Omar, a roundabout way to get to your question, how do you counter that? He counters that with...
Yeah, what does he do?
Well, he says we're going to get back together with the Americans, which he has said. We're going to get that back on track. And
well, he says it's not permanent.
It's
that
not.
The rupture, he's characterizing it as different than the province.
Exactly.
It's not permanent.
Exactly. And I'm wondering where the country is with that, because a lot of people will never forget 51st State. You don't exist as a country from the most powerful man in the world. That was chilling. And I don't think it's gone away, even if he stopped talking about it. And he's saying in a book about the royal family, it was kind of a joke and it just got some traction, or whatever he said. It had a very, very deep impact on the country that a lot of people haven't forgotten. And certainly the Liberal Party hasn't forgotten either.
a comment that was made and then repeated several times after
Over
that.
and over
So,
again.
you know, whether you believe him that it was a joke or not, that's not what,
Yeah.
you know, it has
We're
shown
getting
up to be
close.
in reality. We are certainly
Minutes
getting
away,
close, just a couple of minutes away. In fact, 2:47 is when the polls close. They'll be closing at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll have more right after this.
Imagine you could get help for your stiff, achy joints without products that just hide the symptoms. Instaflex Advanced. It relieves joint pain and stiffness caused by osteoarthritis with key ingredients backed by 5 clinical studies. You'll have better knees in 1 week. Instaflex Advanced. Get it today.
I'm here with Susan, a retired paramedic and Chip Reverse Mortgage customer. Now, as a paramedic, you've spent your life helping others.
I'm proud of that.
So how do you feel now?
To be honest, I couldn't be happier. This was just right for my needs. I get to stay in my house, supplement my pension, and do some of the things that I haven't been able to do.
Like what?
Renovating the kitchen, building up a baking business.
Baking? You have a baking business?
If you're 55 or older, call now for your free, no-obligation Chip Reverse Mortgage Guide. With Chip, you could get up to 55% of your home's value in tax-free cash. Take only what you need in a lump sum or over time with no monthly mortgage payments required. Call 1-888-916-2447.
Now, I'm told you're a pretty incredible baker.
Well, let's see what you think.
Thought you'd never ask. This is going to be good.
Call now for your free no-obligation guide. Call 1-888-916-2447. That's 1-888-916-CHIP or visit chip.ca. Call Chip today and live retirement your way.
It started with a few strands, and then it was everywhere. Stop the shedding with Pantene Abundant and Strong System, powered by Pro Vitamins to strengthen hair at the root and reduce hair fall by 85% for denser hair at a fraction of the cost. Pantene.
Go squeeze. Go wild with nature.
Do you like music? Made a mixtape. Ooh, the sweet sound of savings. Right now, save up to 25% on select tires. Fountain Tire. We're on this road together, Canada, for 70 years and counting.
There's something real here, right?
Yeah, of course. I just needed to spread these wings.
You're talking about living with someone before you've ever had sex? Skip?
I'm here for lunch.
Yo, you shouldn't be having a girlfriend, bro. You should have a wife at this point.
What if we don't have kids?
Welcome back to the CTV News special, Federal By-Elections 2026. I'm Omar Sechvina.
And I'm Vashi Kapelos.
We begin with breaking news. It is 8:30 p.m. That's breaking news Eastern. You can probably tell that from your screen. The polls have now closed in 3 by-elections that could determine a majority Liberal government. We are standing by for those results from those 3 ridings we've been talking about all evening: Toronto's University Rosedale and Scarborough Southwest, and Terrebonne, Quebec, in the Montreal area.
So the reason that we are anxiously awaiting these results, and they could start coming in any moment now, polls have officially closed, is because these by-elections could cement a majority government for the Liberals, which right now the party holds 171 seats. In the House of Commons, they need 172 to give them a majority government. And tonight could provide that, most likely will, because the 2 ridings that we anticipate getting results for first, Scarborough Southwest and the riding right in downtown Toronto, both of those are held by Liberals for a number of years. They were held by senior cabinet ministers, and they are, considered, you could say, safe ridings for the party. So the anticipation is that they will be able to clinch the majority government for the Liberals.
Traditional Liberal strongholds,
Yeah.
Vashti. And let's head over to those ridings right now. Let's start with the riding of University Rosedale, where we find CTV's Heather Wright at Liberal headquarters of Danielle Martin. And Heather, set the scene for us. I mean, what are people saying there tonight? How optimistic are they?
Yeah, I literally just spoke with a member of Danielle Martin's team, and she said that they're feeling good. They're feeling good about tonight, about that campaign that they've run. They say that they've had hundreds of volunteers that have been out knocking on doors, hitting the pavement over the last several weeks, getting out that message. And, you know, voter turnout, Omar, is so important in all of these by-elections because we've talked about how typically in by-elections, voter turnout is much lower. We know from Elections Canada that about 5,000 fewer ballots were cast in the pre-election advance polls this time around than were a year ago. So certainly there has been a large mobilization effort from all of the parties here in this riding. The Liberals here, they're saying they're feeling good about their chances of sending Danielle Martin to Ottawa. Of course, she would be only the second MP to represent this riding, which was formed in 2015. It, of course, was held by Chrystia Freeland for many, many years until she resigned earlier this year to take a post with the government of Ukraine. Omar.
And supporters of Danielle obviously hoping that she delivers a victory speech behind you in that stage. Heather, thank you so much. Let's bring in Adrian Gobriel in the downtown Toronto riding of Scarborough Southwest at the headquarters of Liberal Dolly Begum. Adrian.
Yeah, Omar, that's right. We are here slowly. People are starting to stream in. As I look over to my right, I can see Michael Couteau, MP, federal MP with the Liberal Party, here in Scarborough as well. We're in Scarborough Southwest, which is actually the east end of Toronto. Dolly Begum is a really interesting candidate for the Liberal Party. Lots of discussion here in this riding, which has historically been a Liberal stronghold. Dolly, of course, was an MPP with the provincial NDP here in Ontario. She was even the deputy leader when she flipped and left to join the Liberal Party, saying that she wants to be a part of Mark Carney's government. She feels that she can do more to help Scarborough Southwest as a member of the federal Liberals. We're going to have to wait and see if that comes true tonight. But of course, you can see the lights are set, the stage is set behind me, hoping and planning for a celebration as the polls are just closing at this hour. Now, of course, here in this riding, there's Fatima Shaban. She's with the NDP. Diana Filipova with the Conservatives. And so we're going to see how this all shakes down. I was speaking earlier at a polling station with some voters who say that they generally would vote Conservative, though they like Mark Carney, telling me that they feel that he is serious, he means business, and he's going to help them. We're going to have to wait and see how that all shapes up in a short amount of time.
Early results expected shortly. Adrian Gobriel, thank you so much. And CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin is in the Montreal area riding of Terrebonne at the Liberal headquarters of Tatiana Auguste. Jen, a single vote separating the Bloc and the Liberals last April. What are voters telling you tonight? And describe the scene for us where you are.
Yeah, earlier this evening, Omar, I heard some volunteers at the polling station. I overheard them. They were talking about the fact that they were planning to be there late into the night counting. That's probably not a scoop. They're expecting it to be quite close, but they were packing snacks, they said, because they felt that it could be quite a late night for them counting those votes. Now we're here at headquarters where they're expecting to hear the results. There are some MPs milling about here, people waiting for the arrival of some of the results, and so looking closely at that screen. There have been voters at the polling station, a steady trickle, really quite late into the evening tonight. I saw many people just rushing to that polling station, wanting to make that every vote count. And they're saying that they really want this to be a clear winner result. They want to be able to move on from this election. They're saying, you know, they had their say, they want to have their say once more. And they're expecting this to be really quite a tight race, Omar.
All right, I'll pick that one up again. Geneviève Beauchemin reporting from Terrebonne. Thanks, Geneviève. She's talking about how significant the results there could be. We are understanding from Elections Canada that the final results in that riding, because it's so complicated, there's a ballot where you have to write out the name because there's a long list of people who are running. Those results will likely, Elections Canada is saying, come overnight. That we are anticipating something, some form of the results or some portion of them will be released in advance of that. Just cautioning, we might not know by the end of tonight what exactly is happening in Terrebonne. We do anticipate, however, conversely, we will know more about the two Toronto ridings, which again, from a mathematical perspective, are all that the Liberals need in order to form a majority government as of this evening. Let's talk a little bit more about how people are voting ahead of today, because there was some significant advance polling turnout numbers, particularly in that Montreal area riding. Heather Butts and Nick Nanos are here to talk about that.
Vashi, thank you. Yes, these numbers tell such a great story, not just the numbers here on election night, Nick, but the numbers beforehand. Those advance polls really tell a unique story. So we'll take a look at those in these 3 by-election ridings that we are taking a very close look at this evening. Let's stick with the Toronto ridings here, Nick. University Rosedale, Scarborough Southwest, Liberal strongholds. These ridings are not too far apart. They're in the downtown Toronto core, for those not that familiar with the city. Nick, what do you make of these numbers? Around 9,000, 10,000 for Scarborough Southwest.
You know, it's interesting, Heather. Whenever I think of the advance vote, I think of 2 things: brute force organization on the ground and the competitiveness of a riding. And, you know, you meld those 2 things together and they yield very high advance polling numbers as the parties try to get their vote out. And what's clear, at least, is that when we look in those 2 ridings in Ontario, that, you know, it looks, at least, I think, for some voters, that it might not necessarily be as competitive and that the advance vote is not as high in those 2 ridings.
And if I take a step back here, we take a look at the riding of Terrebonne. 18,200 people showing up for the advance polls. We know that it was just a 1 vote difference last election. What do you make of this?
Well, you know, the thing is what's clear here is that for this particular riding, the organization is strong for both the Liberals and the Bloc Quebecois. Those voters are highly motivated, and it's a competitive race. Vashi was talking about how we might need to wait late to get the results from Elections Canada, and I think a lot of that has to do with how those 2 front-running parties are mobilizing, because the stakes are quite high, not just for Mark Carney and the Liberals. The stakes are very high for Blanchet and the Bloc Quebecois, because if they don't win tonight, that's bad news for them.
Nick, we talk so much about getting the vote out, and you talked about boots on the ground, getting people knocking on doors, helping voters get to those polling stations. Typically with by-elections, the advance polls aren't necessarily as high. This is a pretty significant number. People know it really matters most there.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, the thing is, Heather, is that in many of these by-elections, the voter turnout is not as high, and that's why the advance poll numbers are not as high. But I think Terrebonne is going to be the exception. You know, the thing is, it's still going to be really interesting to look at the results from Scarborough Southwest and University Rosedale. But I think Terrebonne is going to be the one that is going to be on tenterhooks tonight, especially until we see the advance polls, because we don't know who will win the advance polls. And when you have 18,000, I think it's about 18% or thereabouts of all the votes that could potentially be cast already in the bag, when that advance poll number comes out, hold on tight, because it's going to give us an indication as to who might have the upper hand in the count.
Okay, hold on tight. Nick Nanos, thank you so much. Omar and Vashi, will send it back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Heather. And Nick, let's swing over to our strategists. We've talked a lot about the government and other opposition parties, Kathleen, but Nick brings up a good point. The by-election in Terrebonne is very significant for the Bloc Québécois and for the party's leader.
Yeah. I think if there's somebody who is really stands to be a loser tonight, it could be the Bloc leader. If he can't hold on to Terrebonne, it will be significant for his party. Remember, when in history have we seen the Supreme Court overturn the results in an election? It is significant for that reason. And while the Bloc, you know, is territory Quebec, they can mass all their resources in that one riding. The Liberals had an advantage in a few ways. They got to call the by-election timing. They had their convention just days before, just this past weekend, where they could mobilize all of those, people to pull the vote, and they could put all the money they wanted to in terms of up to around $300,000 by pulling money from from University Rosedale, from pulling money from Scarborough Southwest, and plowing it into Terrebonne. And I suspect that they did that. It feels like it's going to be, a very close riding, mainly because of this long ballot initiative. But I think it's Blanchet that has the most to lose tonight. Like, certainly we've talked about Pierre Poilievre and what's at stake for him in terms of his leadership. But I think if Blanchet doesn't pull this out, it weakens the Bloc.
Let's talk a little bit about the other opposition parties, Shakir. Let's say the Liberals are able to, once we start getting results in, secure a majority. There's, one camp that will say it makes Pierre Poilievre's job a lot harder, particularly in managing his own caucus, which is also already a vulnerability. But there's another that says this actually gives him some time to take advantage and try to capitalize on any shine that wears off, the honeymoon stage or whatever we're calling it. Where do you fall in that?
I think it gives him time, but it's going to be contingent on Mark Carney not delivering on the promises he's putting out there. The government making significant missteps, and we'll just have to see if that plays out. I think ultimately, James has said this before, Scott has said it before as well. Mark Carney's selling a picture of unity. It's a very positive message, and it seems Canadians are buying that. Pierre has a very hard job. No matter what happens tonight, he's going to be the leader of the official opposition. His job is to oppose, to hold the government to account, and he does that very well, but he does it in a very negative way that can be very off-putting. I think moving forward, in his majority, he still has to hold the government to account, but he has to find a way to shift that tone just slightly, still prosecute his case against the government, but not be overly aggressive where, listen, I'm part of the base. I'm going to vote for the guy no matter what. I'm not the guy you need to persuade. That other swath of Canadians who don't want to see that level of negativity, who don't want to see the over-aggressive tone and the abrasive tone, how do you prosecute your case in the opposition without being that guy? And it's going to be a very tricky dance, but I think that's the next task for him after the government gets the majority.
I think he would argue, and the people around him, Scott would argue over the past number of weeks, that's what they're trying to do, right? With the speeches that they made in Europe and in the United States, with the podcast appearances, which were very different in tone than the debates that take place in the House of Commons, for example.
I just don't know if it has any effect. I don't know if we can, to be fair to them, expect that it's going to have an effect. For instance, in tonight's vote totals. I mean, they kind of, Scarborough, they came in at 30%, I think. Rosedale, 24. Are they going to match those numbers? Terrebonne, obviously, 18 is a critical number. But I'll tell you one thing that I think is complicating for Mark Carney out of all of this. And it also speaks to the issue of time. People say, well, now this is going to give Pierre Poilievre time to, rebrand, wait for the government to fall, that sort of stuff. I think the honeymoon's going to be over for Mark Carney when the war with Trump is over. And one of the challenges that happens about tonight, he gets his majority. People say, that's fine. We can go to sleep. We don't have to think about politics and casting ballots and waiting up all night to see the result for 3 years. I don't think Carney can wait 3 years. He cannot afford to run the next campaign without Trump front and center. So I don't think he's going to call an election this fall. I don't think he's going to call an election maybe next spring. But he's got to call an election sometime in the next couple of years. And I think that's going to be interesting. How does that work now that he has a majority mandate? He wants to get an election while he still has Trump to match up against.
And Scott, as you were speaking, we had some early results come in there from the riding of Terrebonne, and you can see right now that the Liberal Tatiana Auguste has an 11-vote lead, so small lead right now over the Bloc candidate. I want to ask, and either of you can, any of you can take this. Quebec is such a fascinating political case study in this country. We talk about the province every election. What bearing is what's happening provincially in terms of the provincial politics in that country? How is that impacting the race that we're seeing in Terrebonne, if at all? Kathleen, you want to start?
Yeah, well, as you know, the CAQ just elected a new premier on the weekend. They're going to be facing an election themselves later this fall. I think it does impact. I mean, the Bloc weaknesses is tied to the Parti Quebecois. They use the same machinery. So I think that's all going to play out in this actual election. Carney is popular in the province of Quebec. But what's fascinating to me is the numbers that Heather and Nick just put out. If, in fact, there was 18,000 advance votes in Terrebonne, that's, a significant amount of the eligible voters, more than you would normally see in by-elections. Normally, by-elections don't have great turnout, right? But there is a good turnout, it sounds like, today in advance polls in that riding because of the significance of the vote, the overturning of the Supreme Court, and just how important this vote means.
Shakir and Scott, any other thoughts?
I just think on the provincial level, you're seeing the PQ that was soaring in the polls, and now they're kind of neck and neck, at least in the horse race numbers with the Liberals. Yeah. I think ultimately people don't want to talk about separatism. They want to know how Canada can work together to combat what's happening in the U.S.
Yeah, it's a codifying effect of Trump again. Suddenly, separatism, slicing ourselves into smaller portions, makes no sense when we have this external threat of Donald Trump, and it's providing a kite for Mark Carney, not a francophone, not somebody that Quebecers would naturally say one of ours, and yet he's becoming more popular.
And actually, we should clarify at the bottom of our screen where we're showing a ticker or a crawl, the standings right now. 172 is, of course, majority, but we should clarify that is elected or leading. And what we're seeing with those early results in Terrebonne is that there is a lead, a small lead right now, but it is still
it's also very early. Yeah, there's only, I think, 2 polls report, two polls, like the very, very beginning of all of this.
Very preliminary results.
Yeah, we'll be clear when it's done, and if there is a majority to call, you'll hear it very clearly here.
Absolutely.
First, though, though, we'll take a quick commercial break. And we're back in a moment with more coverage of the by-elections as more results come in.
In 3 by-elections that could determine a majority Liberal government. We are standing by for those results from those 3 ridings, Toronto's University Rosedale and Scarborough Southwest. And we have some already coming in Terrebonne, Quebec, in the Montreal area.
Of course, the reason that we are glued to the screen, to the ticker at the bottom of your screen right now, is because what happens tonight could secure a majority government for the Liberals, who are currently sitting at 171 seats. But as you can see, they have a slight lead in Terrebonne, the Montreal area riding. And so we've got them elected or leading. It's not official in any way, but that's where, the ticker is at the moment, in 172 seats. If that does become official, they will have secured a majority government.
And where that lead is happening, Vashi, is, of course, in the riding of Terrebonne. CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin is standing by at Liberal headquarters of Tatiana Auguste. And so tell me a little bit about the reaction. It is still very early. In fact, Elections Canada, Geneviève, has told us that it could be a very long night. That's what they've told our CTV decision desk. But what are you hearing from people who've gathered where you are?
Well, it appears as though those, of course, would be the early voting results. And so there has been a lot of work that was done on the ground here, a lot of work by the Liberal Party to get out that vote early. So there were hundreds of volunteers that have fanned out across the riding here to try to convince people to go to the polls early. And some of the Liberal Party members are saying that they're very proud of the work that they did in that regard. And that may be reflected in some of these early results that are coming in so far, because so much work was put into it. And at the time, of course, this was before we saw all this floor crossing action. And so a lot of people were saying that at that point, it was such a consequential election. They're still saying it was an important election. They still want this riding. They say, of course, that they were very proud of flipping it, taking it away from the bloc quebecois. And so they still are working the ground here. They were still working very hard into the day today, saying that they really want to get the vote out as much as possible. But some of those results so far could be those early voting results. And that could reflect, as I say, just how many people were knocking on doors, how many ministers were in this riding, dozens of them just going door to door to try to convince people of the Terrebonne riding to go out and vote.
Right, Genevieve. Thank you. And CTV's Matt Gilmore is in the Montreal area riding of Terrebonne as well, but at the Bloc Quebecois headquarters of Nathalie Sinclair-Desgagnés. And that, we know that every single vote does count. And in fact, the Bloc candidate made this part of her campaign slogan. She said that une voix qui compte. It seems as though this could be a pretty long night. We're already hearing celebrations, it sounds like, behind you.
Yeah, I wasn't looking at the screen, so I'm not 100% sure what happened, but I will just take a quick look, and it looks like, based on the results that they have displayed on the screen, that Sinclair-Desgagnés has just jumped in front of the Liberal candidate. So, you were mentioning it's very early and that the Liberals had a brief lead there. There's a lot of confidence still in this room that it is very early and that it's sort of going to go back and forth throughout the night. When this election took place in the fall, the general election, remember, it was decided by just one vote. And so it's a very close race, and it will be interesting to see now, several months removed from that original race, how the sentiment regarding Mark Carney's performance has changed over time, whether there's more support for him or less. The Bloc Quebecois has been, originally when this was potentially going to be a decider, they were saying vote for us to prevent the minority. Now they're saying vote with your heart, hoping that people vote for the Bloc Quebecois this week.
And I imagine we'll be seeing that seesawing as those results come in through the evening. Right now, a single vote separating the Bloc Quebecois candidate and the Liberal candidate. So it is a very tight race, and we were expecting that heading into tonight. Matt, thank you so much. Let's bring in Adrian Gabriel in the downtown Toronto riding of Scarborough Southwest at the headquarters of Liberal Dolly Begum. Adrian.
Starting to fill up here as people are awaiting what many hope will be a win for Dolly Begum. Now, speaking with people at a polling station just across the street, actually, earlier today, and hearing mixed reviews. Hearing some saying that they normally vote Conservative, though that they feel that Mark Carney is serious, that he means business, and he will push through an agenda that they believe is favorable. Others saying they don't like candidates who flip-flop. Dolly Begum, of course, flipped. She was a provincial NDP, MPP, the deputy leader of Ontario's NDP party at Queen's Park. She left Merritt Stiles and the provincial NDP, came over to the Liberals. She's the candidate tonight. This has been a Liberal stronghold for many, many years. Bill Blair, of course, holding this one for more than 10 years before taking on a post in the United Kingdom. And just moments ago was also speaking with Liberal MP Michael Couteau. He says he's been knocking on the doors. He says he feels the momentum tonight here in Scarborough Southwest. We're going to have to wait and see what the vote tells us.
And Adrian, as you were speaking, we had a screen there that showed that Dolly Begum actually had a 42-vote lead. Again, want to caution our viewers that this is still early, but this is one of the Liberal strongholds that we've been talking about all evening. A 42-vote lead over her Conservative rival. Of course, supporters of Dolly Begum will be hoping for that to hold through the evening. We'll be checking in that riding periodically throughout the evening. Over now to the Toronto riding of University Rosedale, where we find CTV's Heather Wright at the Liberal headquarters of Danielle Martin. Danielle Martin, of course, Heather, a former, or a physician, I should say, current physician. What are you hearing from people there?
They're feeling good. I mean, this is quite a party atmosphere, Omar. The food is being passed. The drinks are flowing. We heard a little while ago from sort of the host of the evening, hoping that this is going to be a celebratory evening. Yet now, you mentioned Danielle Martin. She is a physician. She's a healthcare executive. She gained a lot of attention back in 2014 when she testified at a U.S. subcommittee meeting in the United States Senate, really touting the benefits of universal health care. She's a proponent of pharmacare. And so this is the candidate for the Liberals in this by-election. This is the party. They're hoping it's going to be a celebratory one. Some of the other candidates she's running against, Don Hodgson with the Conservatives. He is a business owner in the mortgage industry. Serena Purdy with the NDP, and Andrew Massey with the Greens. Now, as we've talked about all night, Omar, this is one of the ridings tonight that is considered a stronghold. But one thing we are going to be watching for are those vote numbers. Now, we know that advanced polls, advanced voting for this riding were down. we'll have to wait and see which party was able to mobilize their supporters the most as they continue to count these ballots.
All right, Heather, thank you so much. And actually, the poll's closing about a half an hour ago, and we are getting some of those early results. If viewers are just joining us now, let's recap some of those ridings.
Yeah, we're getting some results in Scarborough Southwest. So we had some of our colleagues reporting there from Dolly Begum's. Oh, actually, what you're looking at right now is Terrebonne instead. So we're getting some ridings from Terrebonne, some polls reporting from Terrebonne at this moment.
A single vote there.
Yeah, again, the story of the last election was a single vote clinched the win, and the same thing is happening right now. We've got about 2% in that riding of the polls reporting with that. And then here you've got Scarborough Southwest, where we've got even fewer polls reporting, I think at this point, 1.5%, and you've got a 42 vote lead for Dolly Begum over, as you mentioned before, her conservative opponent. And then finally, we're looking to University Rosedale, where Danielle Martin is running. So far, we have no results in. The latest I checked, at least on the Elections Canada website, showed me that that was a fact. We can roll through that in a moment. We've got some more votes there for Dolly Begum coming in, some more polls reporting. And yeah, you can see that so far no polls reporting yet in University Rosedale, but we are anticipating they will come in fairly short order. No anticipated delays outside of Terrebonne at this point. Lots of advance votes they're able to count early in the Quebec riding.
And Vashi, as you mentioned, this is still very preliminary, still very early. We know from Elections Canada it could be a particularly long night in Terrebonne, but if you looked at those earlier screens, it showed how many of the polls were reporting, and in several cases, there were one or maybe two polls
it's all
reporting.
less than 5%.
Exactly. So it's still, especially in Terrebonne, could be a long night. And we just want to also clarify, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you can see that the Liberals are elected or leading in 172. That does not mean that CTV has yet declared a majority government, but they are elected or leading, we should say. And so that's why that number is at 172. But that call, and trust me, you will know when that call is made. If the Liberals get a majority, you'll know about that. But if, in case you're wondering why that number is at 172 right now, that is the reason. Let's head over to Sandy Ronaldo and the political panel. Sandy, the story right now is pretty much playing out as we anticipated.
Okay, now, Omar, we are prepared to make a call.
That's right.
It is completely unofficial. We have no results. But Nathan Cohen here said he has the solution.
We're going
he
back
has
to the
answer.
Supreme Court, I believe. That one vote victory is going to happen again. What are the odds? Calshi did not have it on its markets, but it's actually that advance vote is most interesting to me in Quebec.
Okay.
Because of what Scott and others talked about. If resources were really poured in for the advance, particularly by the Liberals, but probably by the Bloc as well. Advances sometimes don't tell you what the result really is going to be, but sometimes they're very indicative. And if the advance are the first things we see, which is what we're expecting out of Quebec, and the Bloc are holding or doing well, then I think the prediction of them being able to get that seat back is much stronger, given all of the effort of those hundreds of Liberal volunteers, et cetera, et cetera. That'll be an interesting play. But imagine if it came down to one vote again.
Wouldn't that
Only
be
in Canada.
something?
Just, yeah, fantastic.
Marco, you're itching to say something about voter turnout.
Yeah, I mean, I think in Toronto it is playing out as expected, but the one exception is what's going on in Terrebonne. And if I took down the note right, it's that the total advanced poll turnout was 18,200, which is just shy of the same total number of advanced polls that were cast in the 2025 general election. Now, why is that important? Because you would expect a proportionate drop-off to equal roughly the turnout of the vote in a by-election, which hovers around 30 to 40%. So this number is about 90% of what the turnout was in the general election. I think that speaks to what was described earlier, the brute force of the organization on the ground. And it is very true that the Liberal Party were pouring volunteers, ministers,
money,
caucus colleagues, and let's not forget, just coming out of the convention where there are roughly 4,500 people there. I know there were a lot of buses that were going back and forth there. So I think it speaks to clearly the motivation for the party to hold the riding. And I think on the flip side, there is also the potential that the Bloc is also using un vote qui compte, the Supreme Court nullification as a way to give voice to French language, French culture, the need to have a voice and a check and balance in Parliament. So as the results start to pour in more, we'll get a sense of whether or not this is going to be indeed razor tight or whether or not we could be in for a bit of a surprise.
Okay, but I thought I did hear you say that the Liberals might take it?
Well, I think it speaks to just how much motivation there is. But I don't think there's anybody taking it for granted at all. It certainly seems that there's been a big push to get many, many votes out in the advance poll. What will matter is obviously today as well. I mean, there's still the lion's share of the vote on election day, and that's the moment that we're living in right now. So we'll see, but I think that is a number that certainly raises an eyebrow, and I think as the night plays out, we'll see where it goes.
Okay, James.
Well, I was going to say, Terrebonne's a very interesting riding. Think of the riding historically. Now, the margins of the riding have changed a little bit over the years as a result of redistribution and all that. Terrebonne, in contemporary history, it went progressive. It was liberal in the 1960s and 70s. It was progressive conservative in '88 over free trade. It's been a bloc quebecois riding basically since the bloc quebecois has been contesting campaigns since 1993. There was one deviation from that with Jack Layton and his Orange Wave in 2011. It was held by the New Democrats for one term, and then it went back. But so, like, I think in the normal order of things, in the normal order of Canadian politics in the last 20 or 30 years, Terrebonne probably would be like the 200th riding that the Liberals would win. Liberals shouldn't win Terrebonne historically. They don't historically win it. They don't. It says something about the shifts that have happened on the ground there as a consequence of global affairs and people being prepared to consider new options as a result of the perceived threat of Donald Trump, the real threat of Donald Trump, and also the shakeup in Quebec provincial politics, where you have 5 political parties that all have reasonable bases of support that are all in play there. So this is a district that's gone liberal, bloc québécois, and progressive conservative.
And no floor crossers yet from Quebec.
But from the bloc? Now that would be a story.
They would be taken. We were saying earlier that if the Liberals are successful in this riding, a lot of it will be due to Mr. Carney. Then I'm not saying this, and don't take it the wrong way, but the reverse is also true. If the bloc are able to hold it despite Mr. Carney's popularity, then that's just something to take note of, that the personality of the leadership matters to a point. And as James said, this is a very diverse riding, but it has a very strong history. And I think the Bloc's strategy, frankly, was quite smart in this riding. And how great for those of us who care about democracy, when we talk to so many voters who say, my vote never counts, who cares? We'll always say, remember Terrebonne. Every single time you vote, it could be consequential. It's good for us who believe in this whole system.
Omar Vashi, back to you.
All right, Sandy, thank you so much. Let's bring in Heather, CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin, who is in that Montreal riding of Terrebonne right now. And we've been talking about the Liberal organization leading up to today, cabinet ministers who went there, the people that the Liberals brought in to stump for Tatiana Auguste. Jen, you're with Mélanie Joly right now, I see.
Absolutely. Minister Joly, tell me a little bit about how much work the Liberals put into this riding.
A lot, actually. We're very proud of the work we've done. I think the ballot question was clear. The ballot question was who can provide stability in a world of instability and a much more chaotic and divided world. And we know that the answer to that is Prime Minister Carney and obviously our government. We also had a very strong candidate, Tatiana Auguste, that had also past experience in the House of Commons for the last year. She was also able to get support from many of her caucus members. She actually, became a very strong candidate as the days were going on, and I'm really, really proud of her. And so, yes, we put everything we had in this riding, in the sense that more than 700 volunteers, a lot of different MPs getting involved, and it's going to be difficult until the end. But we're hoping for the best. It's a very historically bloc riding here.
Well, indeed, but earlier on, this was perhaps the majority hinged on this particular riding. Things have changed now.
Yeah.
What does it mean to still hold on to this riding at this point? Does it mean less now that it's not quite that significant here?
Every vote counts and every seat counts. So we will never take anything for granted. And we know that, when it comes to a majority or minority, it has never been really the conversation here. It was much more, who is the right person for these times? We're in a pivotal time in our country. We need to be able also to have the right person and with the right government, with the right representation to support workers dealing with the the trade war. One thing that is really important for viewers to understand is right here in Terrebonne, there are a lot of people that are working in the steel transformation industry. They've been impacted by the tariffs, jobs, layoffs, and at the same time, lots of businesses trying to pivot. There's also an important defense. General Dynamics is here, so just nearby, there's a defense industry that is bit by bit reviving, and so what is the entire plan of our government is actually having clear impacts here in this writing. So that's why it was important for us to be able also to convey the message linked to the fact that, you know, there are lots of things we can't control in the world, but we can control how we build a strong economy, and also we protect jobs. And that's, I think, will be the, you know, what we'll see tonight. But I don't want to take anything for granted, but I think that it will go well.
Although I did hear you say, you know, it's a traditional bloc riding, it's a long-standing bloc riding. Is that an admission that it might be tough?
Well, it is tough. You know, last time the results were one vote difference. What else can I tell you? You know, and the Supreme Court took its decision. Of course, we respected the justice's decision, and so that's why there was a new election called, and so we got involved very much. And I think also Terrebonne is a riding, for those who don't necessarily know the geography of Montreal, is a bit out at the outskirts, on the outskirts of Montreal. It is very much more changing as Montreal and Quebec is changing. And so the second generation of first immigrants coming to Quebec, a very important community from Haiti, also from Northern Africa. And so things are changing in across the country, particularly also here. And so I think that could be actually very favorable in general for a candidate that is from the Asian community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you.
All right, that's Geneviève Beauchemin with Minister of Industry Melanie Joly. They're standing by in Terrebonne. Very competitive riding. We're going to swing over to another riding, perhaps less competitive. We've got no results in yet, but certainly an expectation that the Liberals will be able to hold this riding that they've held now for the last 10 years. Heather Wright is over in University Rosedale with another minister, this one for artificial intelligence, Evan Solomon. Over to you, Heather.
Hi, Vashti. Yes, I'm here with Evan Solomon. A year ago, you were elected to office. Did you think that there might be a by-election a year later that could determine a majority government?
You know, first of all, we've got three great candidates tonight. And, you know, before anybody's thinking about what the result of that is, we got to win the by-elections. It's teams work hard. Here, Danielle Martin, I canvassed with her. I know Danielle. She's a doctor, you know. She's a world-class physician. She's lived in the community. She's done great work. And in Terrebonne, Tatiana's fantastic. That's going to be a hard-fought race. And then, of course, I've been with Dolly in Scarborough Southwest. The thing is, in any campaign, you get your head down. You just are trying to win the riding. The community's got to get to know you. And the focus on this is not about what the overall result is. You got to win today. And look at this crowd. There's a great team of volunteers. And I think they're focused on tonight. What's going to happen? We'll see. But it's going to happen at the ballot box. That's the key.
But with a majority, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves. If the Liberals do win a majority, life does get a little bit easier when it comes to governing. We know that the Prime Minister is going to make an announcement tomorrow about cost of living. I mean, what do the priorities become, or do they stay the same if there is a Liberal government majority?
You know, we are governing, and I think the Prime Minister is leading to build this country strong. He says it every day, to empower citizens, to protect the things that we love, our public health care, which is what Danielle will help to do, our communities. That plan is not going to change. The Prime Minister likes to say, no games. We're doing this. There's no, as he said, we're not proroguing. We are governing together to lead the country in as nonpartisan, as non-divisive a way as possible. We're trying to unite people. And I think people are coming to his message. They're responding to a message that is really not about political games and partisanship. It's about building. It's about building affordable homes. It's about protecting our health care. It's about building up our military. It's about building major projects. It's about launching the community fund. None of that's going to change. Canadians have seen the strategy. They know what Prime Minister Carney does, and that message is only going to continue. Do we want, obviously, to win these three? Absolutely. And they're great candidates. But to me, the message is about unity. And it's an invitation to all Canadians to build together. And, you know, if you vote Liberal, great. If you don't, you're still part of this country to build together, unite together, and work together. And that's what the foundational message has been, is, and will be.
There are rumors as many as 9 other MPs might be looking to join the Liberal caucus. What do you say to critics of floor crossers and of the government? Some have said, you know, perhaps floor crossers shouldn't be accepted into government. What's your response to that?
Well, first of all, whatever happens tonight is going to happen at the ballot box. I think that's a really core message for Canadians, whatever outcome for a minority or a majority government. Floor crossing is a long tradition in our democracy. It's been accepted by the Conservatives, the Liberals. This has happened. There will be opportunities, obviously, at the ballot box in any federal election to respond to the movement of an MP. But it is a testament that what the Prime Minister is doing, this unifying message, people want to be part of. There are people that have crossed the floor that said, you know what, I don't want to tear down, I want to build up. I like his message of unity. I like the fact that he's focused on buying Canadian. I like what he's doing on cost of living and affordability. So they want to join. And again, voters, they're serving their communities. They represent their communities, and they will face the ballot box. But it is a long and established tradition. Conservatives have accepted it. And, you know, if people want to join Mr. Carney's mission, this is about unity. It's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. And I think, you know, are there more conversations going on? Absolutely. There's conversations all the time with people, and that's a good thing.
All right, Evan Solomon, the Minister of AI, Digital Innovation and Economic Development for Southern Ontario.
Wow,
I got it right.
Title.
Back to you guys.
All right, Heather, thank you so much. And in case any of our viewers are wondering right now, hey, we have results from Terrebonne, early results coming in. We've got results coming in from Scarborough Southwest. Why don't we have results coming in from University of Rosedale? We put that question to Elections Canada. Elections Canada is basically saying they don't know why, but they're saying that those results should be coming in a few minutes' time. So for the full for full transparency, that's what they're telling us. So that's what we're telling you. But their assurances are that those results from University of Rosedale, where Heather Wright was just speaking to us, those results should be coming in momentarily. Let's go right now to Scarborough Southwest and to Adrienne Gabriel, who's at the headquarters for Liberal, Dali Begum, who is increasing her lead. Adrienne, what's the atmosphere like?
The atmosphere is quite jovial here. That lead that you're just talking about there, those early numbers we're seeing come in right now, Omar, are what many here have been expected. Dali Begum is a well-known commodity here in Scarborough Southwest, but not with the Liberal Party, with the NDP, the provincial NDP, where just recently she was the deputy leader at Queen's Park here in Toronto. She, of course, flipped. She came over to the Liberal Party. I've been speaking to some of those who've been knocking on doors recently. They say that they've heard a lot of support for the Liberal Party here in this riding over the last number of days. They're really feeling that momentum. Now, interestingly as well, I was also speaking with Liberal MP Michael Couteau, who's a neighboring MP here in Scarborough. And I asked him, you know, Dali Begum is from, traditionally an NDP left-leaning politician. Just a couple of days ago, we had a Conservative, Marilyn Goudou, crossover. I asked him if there's a concern as the Liberal Party casts a wide net that they could potentially be alienating some voters. He said he didn't think so. He said that's proof and point that Mark Carney is governing. He can cross the floor, that he can work with people from a diverse background, diverse political background. And tonight, right here this evening, they're waiting. The stage is set behind me, and they are anticipating a Liberal win here very soon, Omar.
All right, Adrian, as you were speaking, Delhi Begum has maintained her lead. Again, still very early. I believe I saw only 5 polls of the 188 actually who were reporting in that riding. So a lead for Delhi Begum, but still very early. We're going to take a quick break right now. You're watching a CTV News special, Federal By-Elections 2026. As we have been mentioning, the polls have closed and we are getting those early results, except for University of Rosedale, which Elections Canada has told us should be will be put into the system momentarily, and we'll bring that to you. Time now for a quick break. We'll be right back. A majority Liberal government. We have our first results coming in from those 3 ridings right now. These are the first results, Basham University of Rosedale. They were a little bit.
Party with a sizable lead over her Conservative competitor. And then finally, the big contest of the night in the third biggest suburb of Montreal, Terrebonne, where we see the Bloc candidate now just pull ahead by 1 vote, as was the case the other way around in the last election. So this is a very hotly contested riding, still extremely early. You will see, and I know you've cautioned before at the bottom of our screen, we're showing 173 seats for the Liberals. We have not declared either of the seats that would give them a majority government at this point. They're just elected or leading. It's kind of the way our system works. And so that's what you're seeing at the bottom of your screen. But right now, no pronouncements have been made. It's still far too early with the number of polls reporting.
They came in before tonight at 171. They are leading in the 2 Toronto ridings, which is why that number is at 173. But look at that number in Terrebonne right now. The lead is only 1 vote between the Bloc candidate and the Liberal candidate. So we're not able to say whether they're leading there right now. It's simply too early. CTV's Matt Gilmore is in Terrebonne right now at the Bloc Quebecois headquarters of Nathalie Sinclair de Gagné. It is so tight right now. Tell us, Matt, who you're with.
I'm with MP Christine Normandin. She's MP for Saint-Jean, just south of Montreal, and we're here to sort of talk about how the Bloc is feeling today so far.
Pretty optimistic, always cautiously optimistic. Of course, we knew from the start that it would be a tight race. We know that we'll be going to bed quite late, but we are quite confident that we'll go to bed with a smile. So that's something that we could feel on the ground while doing door-to-door canvassing. The people telling us that they would vote for the bloc did it with enthusiasm. They were smiling. Some of them told us, well, we didn't vote last time, or we didn't vote for you, but we won't miss it this time. We'll be behind you. You can count on us. So it was a very enthusiastic response. So it gives us optimism for tonight.
To miss out by just one vote last time around, and now to be having the opportunity to redo this campaign, what different approaches is the Bloc Quebecois taking this time around?
Well, I think the circumstances themselves are quite different. Back in 2025, one of the questions was who will be speaking to Trump, who will be his counterpart. That's not a question anymore. We already know the color of the government. And in the beginning of the campaign this time, one of the questions was the majority. It faded with people crossing the floor. So it gave us space to really talk about the issues, the local issues that people have at heart. Housing, the elderly, the high-speed rail. That was something that we heard quite a lot about. So it gave us space to really talk about things that matter to people. So it was a different campaign than last time.
And I guess, like, what kind of support and what kind of enthusiasm? Talk a little bit about that kind of what you're hearing from voters when you go door to door.
It was really optimistic. And I think we could see from the participation rate, it was quite high for a by-election, and people really knew the importance of voting this time. So they were enthusiastic, and we were confident that they would indeed go out and vote. So it was a very positive campaign, very local. In our case, we were the only one to have a platform to discuss the local issues. So I think it was a good visit card for us, and I'm pretty sure it will make a difference in the end.
If the Bloc does win this seat back from the Liberals, it's a seat that you've held for a very long time. To lose it and then to win it back, what would that mean for the party going forward?
It would mean an extra voice in the parliament, a voice for Terrebonne and a voice for Quebec, instead of having a voice for the government in Terrebonne. That's going to make a big difference. And one of the things also that was mentioned from door to door was that the level of service provided by Nathalie Saint-Clair-Desgagnés was she was in office was very good. A lot of people told us, well, I had an issue, I had a problem, she fixed it, she listened, she was really, she was on the ground, she was listening, she was present. So that's going to be a great addition to the caucus, but also a lovely gain for the population. And that's really what we're aiming for, a stronger voice for Quebec, for French, for culture, for secularism, for everything that represents Quebec.
And of course, she's not a stranger to the caucus, so she was with you guys for the last 4 years. And what would it mean to have her back personally?
Oh, it will be great. She was one of the MPs working on issues that are still discussed in the House right now. For example, the QRAM system, which is costing 4 times what it was supposed to be. She was one of the first ones to raise the flag on this. So there's still fights going on that she digged in the first place. So it's going to be a great addition. She's going to work as hard as she did the first mandate. We know that for sure. So we'll be happy to have her back.
I want to ask you about the energy in this room. Before we came on, you were sort of telling me that there are people from not just here in Terrebonne, but from all over.
Yeah, there's a lot of people coming from everywhere, and we could see that during the campaign. I was in the local, the electoral local quite a few times. All the members for the bloc came 4, 5, 6 times at least doing door to door. But a lot of people from outside as well, by themselves, wanted to be here. And I think it meant something, since it was so tight last time, and losing by a vote and having Nathalie fight in the Supreme Court, I think it gave energy to a lot of people, and they wanted to be to the level of the effort she put in the case fighting for democracy. So that I think it appealed to a lot of people, and maybe that's why we're so numerous tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the fact that perhaps the broader geopolitical question is not as important. I remember when those stories came out about the one vote and the mail-in ballots and the errors. I came and spoke to voters at that time in the area, and they spoke a lot about how it had changed their view a little bit and maybe would have changed their votes. How much do you think that whole scandal that went on impacted the way people think about this election this time around?
I think it will have it had an impact. People talked about that to us when we were just discussing in general with them, and I think it was more important this time during this election that they came out to vote, they knew that someone had fought for their right to vote, for every vote to count during the election. And I think they wanted to be up to that exercise that was done by Nathalie. And maybe they feel that this election is a bit different, and they feel maybe more like they need to express their vote since it was so hardly fought for. So I think it will make a difference as well. We can already see it in the participation rate.
Christine Normandin, thank you very much. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Matt. And we do want to tell you a little bit about that ticker on the bottom of your screen. We're now almost an entire year, a year after the last election, an hour since polls closed. So we are getting some very preliminary numbers in. And in both the Toronto area ridings of University Rosedale and Scarborough Southwest, the Liberal candidates do hold leads. There are few polls reporting, so we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 5% of polls reporting right now. But the lead is tracking, the lead they are holding is tracking with expectations in Terrebonne. In Quebec, we're not anticipating, full results for a number of hours, at the very least, according to Elections Canada, because it is, as you just heard in that interview, a very tightly contested race. But we are getting some more results in right now. They had been just divided by a single vote until moments ago, and now they're divided by 60 or so votes. We've got the Bloc in the lead in the riding with a bring in our strategists, Kathleen Monk, Shakir Chambers, and Scott Reed. Scott, I'll start with you. Both Mélanie Joly, the minister interviewed, and then Christiane Normandin, the deputy leader, both of them expressing a lot of optimism things are going to go their way. What did you take from what they told our reporters?
Yeah, since these numbers are so preliminary, let's just dive into straight speculation and alchemy.
That's exactly what I'm asking you to do. Yeah, that's what you're here for.
I really detected a lot of optimism and confidence coming off of Mélanie Joly. Like, Mel was really sounding to me like someone who was preparing for the arguments as to how they won the riding. She was very careful, so take nothing for granted, giving all the qualifications, but did not strike me as someone who was talking as though she expected to lose, someone who expected to win. Obviously, it's almost impossible to get any kind of eyeball on Terrebonne because there's such a small number of votes, and they're only coming from the advanced polls. But that was the vibe that I got. I personally will be surprised. I know Marco, he crawled into, his doghouse there when he was asked for a prediction. I really will be surprised if the Liberals don't win Terrebonne, just given the sheer force of organizational effort that they've thrown at it, and the fact that they got some popularity.
And that's a 180 on what he said earlier in the show. I'm like, I just want to point that out.
Real-time fact check.
Literal 180. But that's the thing about this kind of these advanced polls. Listen, I remember, claiming the 2015, trying to cling on to a Newfoundland riding because there were advanced polls and we just couldn't call the riding yet. But it didn't end up going our way. That was Jack Harris at the time. But they can be tricky. But this phenomenal number of advanced polls really does make it seem like it's a bit of a Liberal shoe-in. And you've got to give it to Mark Carney, not called yet, but he's been so politically effective at expanding his power without actually having to trigger a full general election. Because that was, a possibility for him. Remember, the government could trigger an election themselves. We are in a minority. And the polls would say, Nick would say, that in fact, if he did say, he would get a stomping majority. But he built this advantage, first of all, through the floor crossers. Now, looks like tonight, through these by-election wins, and will form his majority this way.
Do you think that means, Scott touched on this earlier, but do you think that means if, in fact, this plays out as the polls are leading or indicated that will be the case, Shakir, that a general election is off the table?
I think if Carney gets the majority, there won't be an election until 2029, the next scheduled election. I think they're going to work with their majority. As long as there's no one that leaves the Liberal Party for whatever reasons and brings it back down a few seats, I think we're good till 2029. I would just say to Scott's point, I didn't get the arrogance that he's talking about from Joly or the confidence.
He'd call it confidence. Yeah.
Hubris, swagger.
I mean, when Evan Solomon spoke and then the person in Scarborough Southwest, they try to be very humble, like, oh, we feel good and, we'll see what happens. But they know they're going to win those two ridings. It's pretty obvious they're going to win those two ridings. Terrebonne is the one that we have to be concerned about. And I think in that riding in particular, we'll see how it plays out. But it seems like everybody's very, very motivated. And I think Nathan made the point. In that riding in particular, your vote counts. You know, if there's any writing indicative of every vote counts, it's terrebonne. So we'll see how it plays out. But there's clearly a very high level of motivation from the Liberal side and the Bloc side. I heard Nick Nano say earlier he's looking at the Conservative number to see motivation. I don't think it matters in that riding at all. I think there's two parties that are really battling to win, and we'll see how those voters turn out at the end of the day.
I listened also very closely to Minister Solomon say this is going to happen at the ballot box, right? Again, circling back to the idea that the Liberals tonight want to say we got our majority through the exercise of democracy, not through, you know, the backroom deals that the Conservatives are accusing us of. There's some truth to that, but some part of it is they wouldn't be crossing this threshold without those floor crossers.
And they also wouldn't be winning these by-elections if some of the same dynamics that maybe led to the floor crossers coming over were in place. So that's their talking point for tonight. It's sensible. You don't want to look arrogant. And you do want to emphasize that there's been votes cast by Canadians that have taken you to this point. But they're going to get the majority. We can see that now. I mean, we've even posted it, not confirmed, but we're posting that number, which takes you into majority territory. And I think very quickly, they're going to move off of that. It isn't so much about whether you have the majority after tonight. It is going to be the discussion we were having earlier. What are you going to do with it? And how are you going to operate it?
And do you feel like that number is important? Because Shakir was mentioning, Kathleen, like, do people, like, the number has to stay static, but we know Jonathan Wilkinson, for example, out in BC is likely headed to a diplomatic post fairly soon. So then they're down a count. And then what, you know what I mean? Like,
For sure.
it's a very
Smith, who will be potentially running for the Ontario Liberals. Boularice, exactly.
Like that number quickly changes.
It constantly changes, right? So the thing is, the Liberals wanted to avoid the framing that was being put on these floor crossers. That was the accusation was that they were being opportunistic or potentially anti-democratic by forming a majority this way. And so this by-election opportunity this evening gives them the opportunity to basically say, no, we didn't do it through backroom deals. We did it through democracy. And then, you know, if the rumors are true, they'll get a whole other swath of floor crossers, which will be the padding that they need, the margin that they needed of error when they have these resignations that are frankly planned and the regular departures that will happen over the course of an election. But we have to see like what Carney does next. And we know that there's a spring economic statement coming soon that will likely be coming up in the next 2 weeks. How will the Liberals form the narrative around that? Will they have new policy drops in the coming weeks to show that this new majority government potentially is moving fast for Canadians?
And we don't know officially if they have that majority government, but certainly as we look at some of these preliminary results, Omar, it is giving the impression, even though there's not a huge percentage of polls reporting, the lead is so sizable in both of the Toronto ridings that it looks very much headed in that direction.
We're seeing more of those polls reporting in the three by-elections. Terrebonne, of course, will be the one to watch, but you can see there that the lead between the Bloc candidate and the Liberal has expanded somewhat. Nathalie Sinclair-Desgagnés has 231 vote lead. There are 13 polls out of 211 that are reporting in Terrebonne at the moment. And Vashi, as you were mentioning, the lead growing for the Liberals in those two Toronto ridings of Scarborough Southwest and University Rosedale. So we will be, of course, tracking this extremely, extremely closely in the minutes to come. You're watching the CTV News Special, Federal By-Elections 2026. We're going to take a quick break and we will be right back.
close about an hour ago. They're starting to trickle in. Let's take a look at some of those results.
Here's a look at Terrebonne right now, which is where all the political drama is tonight. You can see the bloc quebecois candidate there has a 68 vote lead, so still very early. 15 polls out of 211 reporting there. Scarborough Southwest, which is, of course, the riding that was held by Bill Blair, who is now Canada's High Commissioner to the UK. Dolly Begum, the Liberal candidate, has a 793 vote lead. And then finally, we'll move over to University of Rosedale, where earlier tonight, the results were sort of delayed. Elections Canada doesn't know why, but you can see those results now. 1,300, almost 1,400 vote lead for the Liberal Danielle Martin. And CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin is standing by in the Montreal area riding of Terrebonne, and she's with the Liberal Health Minister right now, Marjorie Michel, who shares the Haitian heritage of the Liberal candidate in that riding, Tatiana Auguste. Jen.
And we were talking about that, actually. We were talking about the Haitian community in the riding here. Tell me about, you've been going door to door, talking to people. What are they telling you? What were they telling you about this race?
Oh, well, people were talking much more about the cost of living and the general situation around the world. You know, the war, the last 2 weeks was about the fuel. People were talking a lot about, you know, the cost of fuel. But I have to say also that a lot of people, the one who are watching politics, because not everybody knew even that there were an election in the riding, but those watching politics, they were very often saying that Prime Minister Carney is a reassuring Prime Minister, that they feel safe with Prime Minister Carney. So I think there's a sense of Prime Minister giving them comfort that he's doing the right thing for now, you know.
We're seeing that the Bloc candidate has some votes ahead. It's early still, but you were saying it's stressful. You were saying that you're on edge tonight.
Well, you know, it's stressful because, you know, it's we had an MP and now we want her back. And, you know, it's, of course, it's stressful, but I know also that, you know, this riding was a Bloc Quebecois riding since 1980. We won it last time. We had a fantastic candidate, an MP, and we worked the ground the more we could.
Do you think that it changed the race, that it was likely to be a majority without the Terrebonne riding? Did it change a little bit people's comforts, where they might be able to go back to their, you know, their first love of the Bloc Québécois?
I think yes, some people. I think some people would do that because as soon as they know that we already got our majority, you know, without Terrebonne, it could change. But I could say, you know, you cannot win only with people changing their minds. We also found here a lot of liberals, people who didn't vote even in 2025 because they were liberal and they knew it was going to be Bloc. And this time they said, well, we understood and we will go to the polls. So this is why I feel, yes, it is a real race, you know.
And you're talking about the sort of bread and butter issues that people were talking about. What kind of other, I mean, there are concerns about the high speed train. Are local issues, did those take over, or really it was the overarching?
I would say the global issues took over the local ones. Some people were asking questions sometimes about the municipal. They didn't know, you know, it's always very complex for people to know exactly what's federal, provincial, municipal. So we had a number of things like this, but globally, I would say the cost of living and the global anxiety was one of the major topics.
You talked about the fact that this is a traditional Bloc Québécois riding, has been so for so many years. Of course, it was redesigned, there were changes, but still, overall, a Bloc Québécois riding. Almost 90% of people in this riding are francophones. That's changing, you think? Could it help tonight with the results for the Liberal Party?
Well, I can tell you the demographic in Terrebonne is changing, and that could help the Liberal Party of Canada for sure, because we talk to this electorate, and they see themselves in us. So I think it can help. Is it going to be enough to win? I don't know.
Oh, up by one again. I guess it could.
Well, anyway, I would say Tatiana was a fantastic candidate, and she was a fantastic MP. And really, this is what people are talking a lot about majority, minority. Now we are majority, but for me, it's like bringing Tatiana back to Ottawa. For me, it's really important because she's young. She learned the job. She was fantastic. And as a Quebecer also, I want to keep my Quebec caucus back to Ottawa.
Thank you so much. I guess it will be a long night. I know you'll still be on edge. I can through the night that you've told me that. Thank you so much for your time. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Jean-Pierre Boschman with the Federal Health Minister, Marjorie Michel. And we've got some results coming in from all ridings. You can see there the riding of Terrebonne still very close. It keeps going back and forth between the Bloc and the Liberal candidate, which is exactly how close we thought it would be. In the riding of Scarborough Southwest, a different story. The Liberal candidate, Dolly Begum, there with a sizable lead, even though there are still a minority of polls reporting a sizable lead over her closest competitor. That's where we find Adrian Gobriel. He's at Dolly Begum's headquarters in the riding of Scarborough Southwest. Things getting loud there, I see by the look on your face there, Adrian.
Yeah, that's right, Vash. Yeah, the music is blaring. The celebration started early, though. It is still very early in the count. We still do not have a winner yet, as you've just shared with our viewers across the country, though individuals have been piling in here tonight. Lots of Liberal supporters who've been knocking on doors for Dolly Begum have been arriving. They've been telling me that over the last number of days, as they've been knocking on doors, they've felt that momentum. They felt that support from many here in Scarborough Southwest. Interestingly, former Toronto Mayor John Tory, who historically was a card-carrying Conservative, he was on the campaign trail with Dolly Begum over the weekend. And, she crossed over from the provincial NDP. She was the deputy leader of the provincial NDP as an MPP. She said she wanted to join Mark Carney's government. She wanted to work with him. She felt that she could do the most to help people in Scarborough Southwest by joining the Carney government. Now, we're still waiting to see if that comes to fruition, though this has been a Liberal stronghold, as we've been discussing all night, Vashi, just talking about the history here in this riding. For 10 plus years, Bill Blair held this riding before he was moved to his post in the United Kingdom. So we're still waiting to see. It's early. We're still seeing just some of those early counts of votes coming in here for Scarborough Southwest, though lots of people hooting and hollering here, people having fun. It's a pretty jovial atmosphere here. Some going on stage and taking selfies while the crowd cheers. That's the mood that's happening here tonight in Scarborough Southwest.
All right, Adrian, thank you so much. Similar story happening in parallel where CTV's Heather Wright is standing by at the Liberal headquarters of University of Rosedale. And I'm just looking at the numbers right here, and it looks like 11% of the polls are reporting in that riding just over, actually, I just changed. 15% of the polls are reporting, and a sizable lead right now, just over 2,300 votes total for Danielle Martin, and that is something that has been growing through the night and expanding through the night, Heather.
Certainly, and the crowd is excited here. You over the course of the night, we've heard from various supporters, various politicians that are here feeling very good about their candidate, about this campaign, and they're seeing those numbers come in, and they're very happy with what they're seeing. Now, it's very interesting being here in University Rosedale when you think about the MP that Danielle Martin is running to replace, and that, of course, is Chrystia Freeland, who really did start the entire Carney government with her resignation from the Trudeau government about 18 months ago. And so being here in this riding where Chrystia Freeland she stepped aside, Trudeau decided to not run in the election, paving the way for Mark Carney to be elected as Liberal leader. It's very interesting being here and seeing that this riding will soon elect their next MP, and it will likely be Liberal Danielle Martin.
All right, Heather, thank you so much. Let's bring in our Ottawa Bureau Chief, Graham Richardson, right now. And certainly looking or listening just to that audio there, Graham, you can almost tell that at those two Toronto ridings, they are preparing for celebration.
We're looking for one of three, and one of the ridings I heard we're up to 15% now. So clearly a trend is happening, and obviously it depends on how you heard Melanie Joly, whether it was confidence or whether it was cautioning that maybe we won't get it in Terrebonne. But as we've been saying, one of the three gets them to 172, 2 or 3 gets them higher. So we'll continue to wait and watch for that. The other thing, too, that we haven't talked at all about is in context of floor crossings, like tonight is a night about volunteers and about pulling vote, right? And so when the Conservatives are hit with those kinds of things, you have to think long term about the damage that does to that volunteer base. Now, I know they're committed, but you know, this is hard work. This is not easy to do this. On by-election night, it's smaller, arguably, than obviously a full general. But, you know, it's just something I'm thinking about because we're looking at vote being pulled. We're looking at volunteers engaging, right? And so that's the hard part about the bigger story here tonight on the Conservative side is those defections and the impact they're going to have. Because I don't think it's going to go away quickly, regardless of if Mr. Poilievre is able to hold on or not.
They might have some time, though.
They will have time.
Right?
If
it's not a tomorrow issue for
Absolutely.
them now with a majority secured, they have a you know, to their credit, they have a pretty strong volunteer
Very
get
strong.
Out the vote
Yes.
base at this point.
Yep.
Yeah. So lots more results coming in as we take a look at University Rosedale, as we take a look at Scarborough Southwest, both Liberal strongholds, senior ministers there, and certainly sizable leads for the Liberal candidates, Danielle Martin and Dolly Begum in both of those ridings, terrebonne in Montreal, just outside of Montreal, very much a more competitive race, one that has been competitive all night, was competitive in the last federal election and remains so at this hour. Let's swing over to Sandy, who is with our political panel for some more analysis.
Okay, Vashi, everyone here is fascinated by the race in Terrebonne. And at one point, Nick Nanos was invited over here because we had a question for him.
Yeah, the question was, how does the early number on the advance stack up against last year? And I do think it really bears careful examination. So, you know, I say with a heavy caveat, let's see how the rest of the night plays out. And let's see how today goes in terms of the overall turnout. But I agree with what Scott said, notwithstanding the fact that he was making comments about doghouses. I just try to stay out of them, unlike you, Scott. You spend an awful lot of time in there. But I do agree that, you know, Minister Joly and others have projected, I think, some cautious optimism. Either way, I think it's quite remarkable that the Liberal Party has established a presence through the most recent incumbent, Tatiana Auguste. And the real question will be now whether or not they can pull this rabbit out of the hat and now bring her back to Parliament.
James, what do you think? I mean, we were talking about voter turnout, and the question was, why would there be such a large BQ turnout as well, along with the Liberals?
I mean, I suppose a lot of it is machinery politics, a long-lasting, you know, legacy of parents and kids. Like now, for Bloc Quebecois was first contested the campaigns across Quebec on a broad scale in 1993, right? So you're now going back 30 years of a political party having machinery and families and a bit of a legacy of voting patterns there that is deeply held. So if they can reanimate that and get that vote out, obviously it'd be pretty forceful. But I do kind of retreat back to, I think, Scott's view, right? Which is, if you voted for Mark Carney last year, what has he done in the last year to offend you to not vote for him again? You might be disappointed. You might be really disappointed next year. But right now, nothing has really happened in the last 12 months to make you not vote for Mark Carney again, which puts the Liberals in a good spot. Plus, the Liberals have a machinery advantage and a fundraising advantage more broadly. They had their convention strategically in Montreal. You get those volunteers out to push out and get the final vote out. We have less than 15% of the votes have been tabulated so far. And look, by the way, as a historic parallel, my riding that I used to represent voted Reform Party in 1993, 1997. The Member of Parliament stepped down. We had a by-election in 1998, and the Liberals won it. Liberals had not won my riding since 1968, but they won it in 1998. Why? Because it was in between election campaigns. It was clear there was not going to be a change in government, and they elected an incumbent sitting mayor of the largest city in my town. Why? Because he knew the community well, and you can get something possibly out of that. So I think in a practical way, we talk about politics at a high level here and what it means for the country and red and blue and all that. Right. But if you're a regular citizen on the ground, the argument of having a government member of parliament who can actually deliver something tangible to your community has meaning.
I have to stop you there, and I owe you one, but I have to throw back to Omar and to Vashi, okay? I won't forget.
Okay, we have some breaking news right now. The CTV News decision desk is ready to make a call. Well, there you have it. Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberals have formed a majority government, taking the riding of University of Rosedale in Toronto to reach 172 seats.
This is the first Liberal majority government and the first in Canada since Justin Trudeau formed a majority back in 2015. But at this moment in time, it remains a technical majority. The Speaker of the House is Liberal, so that Speaker will still need to cast a vote if things remain stagnant at this point in order to break a tie. But, and I will say it's a big but, that changes if the Liberals win another seat, which they very much look on track to doing. Right now, they've clinched University of Rosedale, but in Scarborough Southwest, they have a very sizable lead at this point. You can pull up some of the results as we take a look at them right now.
Yeah, and as we told you, Danielle Martin has been, our projection is that he will win that riding of University of Rosedale. And here's how the numbers are stacking up right now. 35 of 153 polls reporting, and she's got about a 2,100, more than that, vote lead over the NDP candidate. So again, the victory there, clinching Mark Carney's government to majority status. He will be forming a majority. Let's go to CTV's Heather Wright at the Liberal headquarters in University of Rosedale. Heather, I can imagine there's already a sense of elation where you are right now.
Certainly a lot of cheers with the news that Danielle Martin is going to win this seat. Now, I'm speaking quietly because you might be able to see behind me, Bob Rae is addressing the crowd here tonight. Now, Bob Rae is one of the MPs that represented part of this ride. Is introducing Danielle Martin now, saying that he has known Danielle Martin since before she was born. And so the crowd really excited, enthusiastic, and getting ready to hear the words from the newest MP that is going to go to Ottawa, Danielle Martin.
All right, Heather, thank you so much. And again, just to recap, the Liberals have formed a majority government. They have reached the 172 seats that are needed. Heather Wright, of course, speaking to us from University Rosedale, which was, of course, the riding that previously belonged to Chrystia Freeland, who has now become an advisor to Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky and also taken up a position at Oxford University.
And who was there the day that the campaign kicked off next to Bob Rae, who is in the midst of introducing Danielle Martin to make her victory speech. And we can take you through some other outcomes or some of the other results that we have in. Scarborough Southwest is where our eyes turn next because, of course, though the Liberals have now formed a majority in order to get over that technical majority of 172 and get 173 seats, this is the obvious place to look. You can see how sizable the lead for the Liberal candidate in Scarborough Southwest is for Dolly Begum. Adrian Gabriel is live for us there right now. Adrian, what is your sense on the ground?
Well, the sense on the ground is lots of excitement here. The room is absolutely packed right now, Vashi. Nate Erskine-Schmidt just walked in. We've got Michael Coteau, Liberal MP here. The President of the Young Liberals of Canada has walked in and introduced himself to me. Lots of big Liberals in this part of the country arriving here in anticipation. They believe that Dolly Begum will be winning tonight. We're still waiting to see. The votes are still in the early stages. She's up against Diana Filipova, is the Conservative who's really right now the closest to Dolly. And Dolly Begum is a household name here in this part of the GTA. She was an MPP for Scarborough Southwest as a member of the NDP, most recently as a deputy leader of the provincial NDP. So, she really has a strong base already in place here. Previously, she was the first Bangladeshi Canadian ever elected to office in Canadian history. And this is also a riding that is really multicultural. About 64% registered on the latest census as visible minorities. The top three are South Asian community, members of the Black community, as well as the Filipino community. And many of them represented here tonight as they pack in this room. We've had people cheering as they've been seeing some of the early counts of votes coming in on the TV screens as they're watching CTV News Channel right behind us. And we're keeping a close eye.
All right. Thank you so much, Adrian. Appreciate it. It's Adrian Gabriel at Dolly Begum's headquarters. That's the Liberal candidate in Scarborough Southwest. And our decision desk can now confirm that Dolly Begum will win that riding, which puts the Liberals at 173 seats officially, one seat past what was needed for a majority government. So tonight, a historical night, the first time in Canadian history that a government has gone from a minority to a majority through by-elections. There was a lot more that happened before that, including 5 floor crossers since just November. But essentially, a year ago, we were sitting, Omar, in the same place. The Liberals formed a minority government after a general election. A year later, just shy of 2 weeks, less than a year, the Liberals have now moved to a majority government.
Yeah, they started off this night at 171 seats. Now we are able to project that they will be capturing the riding of Scarborough Southwest, of course, the riding that used to belong to Bill Blair, who is now the Canadian High Commissioner to the UK, and University of Rosedale, the former riding of Chrysler Freeland, which we are able to project tonight is going to Danielle Martin. So the Liberals able to hang on to those 2 Toronto area ridings, which is why at the bottom of your screen there you see that number at 173, 1 seat past the majority status of 172. The riding that we are all watching tonight, which has been somewhat seesawing, but as of late the Bloc Quebecois has been able to expand their lead, is of course the riding of Terrebonne. You will remember, if you go back to last year in April, the Liberals had clinched that riding, but by a single vote. And this February, the Supreme Court of Canada nullified the results in that riding, which is why we are seeing tonight's by-election. So I did momentarily say that the Bloc Québécois had a lead. Look at that picture now, right? There is a 62 vote lead for Tatiana Auguste. So again, a really small lead, but it just gives you a sense of how much seesawing we're going to see through those late evening hours and possibly into the early morning. And in fact, Elections Canada did signal earlier this evening that the results may not come for several hours. So even though the Liberals have their majority this evening with 173 seats, this will be the riding to watch in Terrebonne, which is about 20 minutes outside of Montreal, to see if Tatiana Auguste is able to keep that riding, which she won by single vote last April. So the drama, Bashi, continues.
Sort of. It's a nail biter, but the big story is tonight, and I'll bring in Scott, Kathleen, and Shakir, the Liberals have clinched their majority. And I think, I always think in elections it's important to give who wins their due. 18 months ago, you and I, Scott, and Kathleen were on every panel talking about the death of the Trudeau Liberals. They were done. They were over. They were going to win 15 seats. And a year and a half later, they have managed to transform a minority government into a majority government. Like, your take?
Well, it took 2 steps. They thought they were doing it 1 year ago. And now here they are a year later. They finally achieved that majority government. But I want to underscore what you're saying. This has been such an extraordinary, historic, and atypical, unprecedented process. Like, we have rarely seen a political resurrection of the kind that Mark Carney enabled for the Liberal Party. They were done. They were in the ditch and covered with leaves. It was over. And Carney comes onto the stage. Trump intervenes in our politics, barges through like a bull. And here we are a year later with a majority government. All those questions with respect to Donald Trump remain. Prime Minister's got a monster challenge. I mean, we can talk about how great the political run has been for Mark Carney, but man, what a difficult time to be Prime Minister. The challenges are overwhelming.
What materially changes for the voter tomorrow morning?
Nothing. Nothing will materially change for voters. I think if we want to be honest, maybe expectations in a casual way will rise for the government, and they'll say, well, now you got your majority, so you can snap your fingers, let's get a pipeline. Snap your fingers, let's get a port. But I think for most people, the reality is they're going to wake up tomorrow worried about the price of gas and the effect that Donald Trump is having on their day-to-day lives, just like they woke up today.
Is there a cautionary note, though, Shakir, in how much has changed over the last 18 months? Like, can you really be certain that the Trump factor holds in this way, or that the Carney factor holds in the way that it has? It feels like I feel nervous to pronounce anything based on the last year and a half.
No, absolutely. I think when I look at this majority, people are voting on the promise of Mark Carney. I think James said earlier, there's no reason to not vote against him right now, but he hasn't really put anything on the table to say that, wow, this guy's doing a magnificent job, right? So there's a promise that he's going to deliver for you. But there's so many variables out there. There's what happens with Kuzma. There's obviously global instability. There's separatist movements in Alberta and Quebec. There's a potential pipeline, what that does to his caucus and caucus management. There's so many things that are going to come at Mark Carney over the next year or so. How does he manage those things moving forward? I would also add, I think there is a generational divide. With all due respect to Scott, he said numerous times, this war that we're at, against Donald Trump, I'm looking around. I'm pretty sure I'm the youngest person on this panel. I don't think. With all due respect. I don't think people in my bracket view that threat the same way that we view paying rent, buying groceries, things of that. The affordability issue. I think that's just top of the priorities for us. Not this battle against the U.S. Not Donald Trump. And so we have to see how Carney manages that generational divide that I see on these issues.
You don't think even younger people think that Trump is the accelerant for all of those challenges, or many of those challenges?
The issues that we're facing right now with rent, with food, these things happened way before Donald Trump. I'm not going to sit here and point fingers at the previous government, but I mean, at the end of the day, the Liberals were in power for the past 10 years, and these issues accelerated. Donald Trump sure has been a factor on them, but he's not the cause of some of the issues we're facing on affordability. And I think a lot of youth see that.
But clearly, I don't think people think Mark Carney is either.
Mark Carney's
or he'd be getting pounded tonight.
Mark Carney's not the cause of the issues. I agree with that. They're putting trust in him that he can deal with the cost of living issues. I totally agree with that, for sure. There's a promise that he can do these things. But if he doesn't deliver, if he doesn't start putting numbers on the board, he's going to be in for a world of hurt when we face that next election.
It's interesting also, though, for the non-politician, right, who a year ago everyone was like, is he going to be okay in this politics thing, 100%. The central banker? Is he going this is really minority government through political maneuvers.
Political maneuvers, yeah, you could almost say.
I'm not saying that negatively or positively, just political maneuvers.
Yeah, on April 29th, 2025, it's like Canadians decided to get engaged to Mark Carney, and tonight they're getting married. It's like it's sealing the deal. It's taken almost a year, but they've moved forward because he was a novice politician. We didn't know who he was. Yeah, whenever we talk about marriage, Scott and I are like, we are not qualified to have this conversation. But I want to draw your eye to something else that we haven't talked about tonight. It's interesting kind of bookends on this story, if you will. Remember, December 16th, 2024, Chrystia Freeland dramatically resigned, right? Which triggered Trudeau's resignation in January of 2025, which opened the door to a leadership race, which brought in, of course, Mark Carney. Tonight, one of the very seats that is up for grabs, that CTV just declared, University of Rosedale, is her seat. And so it's kind of like this perfect bookend where she actually triggered the race, which allowed Mark Carney to get in, and now is, in fact, helping him by delivering her seat, which gives him a majority.
Maybe Mark Carney should have given her more than transport minister.
Maybe.
Just joking. It's just a joke. She's doing lots of things now. Yeah.
All right, let's bring in Heather Butts right now, who is with Nick Nanos. Heather, what have you got?
Thank you so much, Omar. We're going to take a deeper dive right now at the riding of Terrebonne. We've been talking about it all night. So just to let you know where we're standing right now, about 55 of the 211 polls have closed. The Liberals currently in the lead with 229 votes ahead of the bloc quebecois. So who are the people of Terrebonne? Who are these voters who are making this dramatic shift all night that we've been seeing between those two parties? So we had Environics Analytics break down Terrebonne for us. They broke it down into 12 segments of the population, but we're going to take a look at the top two. So we're going to start with Les Familles. So these people, upper middle income Quebec suburbanites, their average household income about $140,000. They work in the trades. They have diplomas. They typically have school-age children, anywhere between 35 and up. The other segment of the population that's really driving these results would be the small city singles and couples with modest incomes. Their income averaging about $85,000 per household. Their jobs looking towards trades. They all have diplomas, apprenticeships, and they have issues. They all have typical issues that are really driving this segment of the population. But those two segments really broke down the Liberals and the Bloc Québécois, basically taking 40% each. The average household value of $460,000. If they're paying rent there, around $1,100 per month. When it comes to tariffs, though, the jobs at risk very high. We heard Melanie Joly earlier in the show talk about the automotive sector there, as well as the aluminum sector. Financial vulnerability to tariffs would be at medium. Food insecurity would be at about 5%. So those are the two people who are really helping those Bloc Québécois and the Liberals battle it out. I want to bring in Nick Nanos now. Nick is going to help us break this down even further. Nick, we want to take a look now at the leadership and where that stands right now. We're going to bring that graphic board up for us. Walk us through this, Nick.
No, so you can see, this shows the plus minus, the vote change when we roll up all of the by-elections, what's happened tonight. And you can see, if you look at Pierre Poilievre, he's down 14 percentage points. And you have the BQ up, the Libs up, the NDP generally flat, no change for the Green Party. The other key thing is that when we look at the riding of Terrebonne, Conservative support is at 3.3%, Heather. A far cry from 18%. So the big question is, where are those Conservative voters? Did they stay home? If they came home, if they went out to vote, who did they vote for? And the other thing is let's face it, if you're a Conservative strategist and you're looking at this number in Terrebonne, 3.3 compared to 18%, you're going to be asking yourself questions because this is just another signal. I think it's probably fair to say that Pierre Poilievre will not do as well tonight as he did do in the last federal election in these three ridings. And the big question is how will his caucus and how will strategists kind of receive that? But watch the BQ, watch the Liberals, and then we'll watch for the fallout for Pierre Poilievre potentially.
Absolutely. Nick, thank you. We'll throw it back to Omar and Vashi.
All right, Heather, Nick, thank you so much. So if you are Pierre Poilievre tonight, Graham, what are you thinking?
Well, look, to Vashi's point and to all the millions of Conservatives who voted for him and for the party, he's in a position where there's a lot of people who still believe in him. It appears that he has listened to some of the harsh criticism of his style. He's not chomping apples at local reporters anymore. I'm new old guy, right? I used to work on the Hill many years ago. I was a local anchor. I went away for a while and I came back. The most vigorous outreach to say hello to me and to just chat with the new bureau chief of CTV National News, the Conservatives. So that's a small thing. I don't know if that's going to translate for the public, because politics is kind of like television. The frame sets around you if you're a leader. And once it's on, it's hard to shake off. And so I think he's trying to slightly shake it off by keeping his base. But to Nick's point in Terrebonne, like that's one by-election. But I was wondering about that big return for them, that 18% in the general. That's big in that riding. And now, what was the number? Like it's down to 2. It's like that vote disappeared. So if that's a trend around the country, that's obviously a problem. Again, one riding. It's not going to happen in the prairies. It's not going to happen in Alberta. But in order to win, like Harper, he's got to punch into those big cities. Is he further away from that now tonight than he was before the by-elections?
I would argue that tonight is not as important as the next few days and the next few weeks, only because they anticipated this outcome.
Yes.
They have for a long time. We've all been talking about this possibility ever since the by-elections were called. I think what matters next is if there are more people who leave the Conservative Party.
Totally agree.
If there are more MPs who cross the floor to the Liberals, who now, see this as a signal that they can or they should or whatever it ends up being, that will be harder to withstand. Yeah.
And sorry, Omar, and 4 in 5 months is a lot. If that becomes more, even though we've said he's got the party, you got to hold caucus.
Well, and that was exactly my point. I mean, that completely negates the overwhelming endorsement that he got from his party, right? What was something like 80-90%? And so if you have this drip of people leaving your caucus, people are going to be wondering, how can you manage them? What sort of inspiration are you providing them? So that is certainly going to be a big question. For Mark Carney, though, we've touched on this earlier this evening. Marjorie Michel was talking about this earlier this evening with Geneviève Beauchemin. The fact that when she was knocking on doors, people described Mark Carney as somebody who was a reassuring figure. Not surprising that she would speak so glowingly of her boss this way. But at a certain point, you have to get results, not just reassurance. What has he got to do now as of tomorrow?
Well, I think we're going to see something from him. I gather a major announcement coming, apparently on an affordability issue. We can all guess what that might be. The other thing, I mean, he's got to show results. The switch from minority to majority is I agree with Scott and others who said that, you know, mechanically for the public it doesn't mean much, but the narrative does change. I'm here for at least 3 more years, maybe 2.5, whatever it's going to be. That's a long time as opposed to a minority where you could go down. Now everybody's got to stay healthy. The margin's still small.
It's still, yeah.
Things can happen, you know, so it's not easy street, but it is a different story, and that's. His story has been very successful. And again, I keep saying it. It's not going to last forever. This is a longer honeymoon, I would argue, and extraordinary times. But when it goes, what's that going to look like? And it will go. It always goes for governments, regardless of stripe.
Mm-hmm. All right, Graham, thank you. You are watching a CTV News special, Federal By-Elections 2026. The Liberals have won 2 by-elections to hit the 173 seat point. That the majority status was 172, so that they have surpassed that by 1, and they have formed a majority government.
We're going to continue tracking reaction and share it with you as it comes into the newsroom. Right now, we've got to take a quick break. We're still waiting for results from Terrebonne. We'll be back with those next.
And Scarborough Southwest. We're still waiting, as Vashi mentioned, for Terrebonne, and here is the whip around right now. Scarborough Southwest, you can see that Dolly Begum is in the lead with about 4,200 votes. And she has consistently maintained that lead through the evening. University of Rosedale, here are the results from that riding right now. 75 of the 153 polls reporting Danielle Martin, as we told you earlier this evening, has been elected in that riding of University Rosedale. We want to go to CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin, who is standing by in the Montreal area riding of Terrebonne. And Jen, we have been able to call those 2 Toronto area ridings, but right now Terrebonne is still pretty tight.
We're still watching that seesawing. We're still watching Tatiana Auguste, the Liberal, a little bit ahead, but people are on edge here, including Joël Lightbound, who's Quebec's lieutenant for the Liberal Party. Tell me about what it's like now. What are you feeling about these results?
It's a very close race, as we expected, and the results, it's still early. More than half of the polls yet to be open, but it's encouraging to see our amazing candidate, Tatiana, taking a short lead, but a lead nonetheless.
Now, you told me that you were going through the riding, you were talking to business leaders in this, businessmen and women in this region. Tell me about the issues that they were bringing up most particularly to you that, could make a difference to me.
I'll say this of the business people here in the riding, but constituents as well that I've met as well as different organizations with our candidate, Tatiana. There are 2 things. One, what I've heard a lot is that for many here, they see themselves and they are drawn to the kind of leadership that Mark Carney has brought to the Liberal Party and to Canada. Focus on the economy, trade diversification, building our armed forces, resiliency of the Canadian economy, building major projects, such as many that we've seen here in Quebec, in the Port of Montreal, for instance, is one example, high-speed rail as well. But the second aspect is our candidate has really left a mark in the last year when she was an MP, where she's gone to meet her constituents, her business community, her cultural organizations, and they've adopted her in many ways. And I think those 2 aspects will play in the results, as well as the incredible work the Quebec caucus has done here.
We were listening a little bit earlier to one of the commentators talking about the fact of our commentators on the show, talking about the fact that, early in the general election, that voters got engaged to Mark Carney. With this, they're getting married to Mark Carney. What will happen if they actually get this particular riding?
That would be amazing. It's that's what, of course, I'm rooting for. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Geneviève. Geneviève Beauchemin with Joël Lightbound, a federal cabinet minister over there in the riding of Terrebonne. We are still awaiting the results there, where the Liberals are ahead of the Bloc Québécois, but that riding is a very close riding, so we're not yet prepared to call it. We have called the riding of Scarborough Southwest for the Liberals, as well as University Rosedale, that allows the Liberals to form a majority government with 173 seats. We're going to bring up Heather Wright, our colleague who is live right now at the University Rosedale headquarters. I believe the winning candidate there, Danielle Martin, has already spoken. What was her message to the crowd?
Yes, we heard from her a little while ago. Since before she was born, and she came up on stage she is adopted to continue to be a family doctor. She also talks about the fact that calling this riding, that's
to our colleague Adrian Gabriel, who is instead in the downtown Toronto riding of, actually just outside the Greater Toronto area of Scarborough Southwest. We do have Adrian Gabriel, and I believe Dolly Begum is about to talk any moment, who is the winning candidate in that riding.
Yeah, that's right. We're here at the front. Supporters here erupted in cheers when they heard that we had called Dolly Begum as the winner here in Scarborough Southwest. People, I think they're feeling all right tonight. How are you guys feeling? What does this Liberal win mean?
It means a lot because, Scarborough Southwest is the most Bangladeshi populated area, and she made the history for us. She made the pride for us. She will be the first Bangladesh origin member of parliament representing in Ottawa. So this means this is one of the day we waited for so long. So thanks for our Honorable Prime Minister Mark Carney for giving out the opportunity. And this means a lot of almost 200,000 Bangladeshi people living in Canada. So this is one of the starting point for us, you know what I mean, politically. So we are excited. We are overjoyed.
You get a sense there of the excitement in the room. And what he's referencing is that Dolly Begman, during her time as an MPP with the NDP, was the first ever Bangladeshi Canadian voted to office in Canadian history. Just take a little look right here. The place is absolutely packed here tonight. We're right at the front stage. Dolly Begman is expected to take the stage any minute, and they're clearly celebrating a Liberal majority government. We'll send it back to you.
Yeah, a lot of pride from her community members behind you. Adrienne Dolly Begum was, of course, deputy leader of the NDP, but will now be going to Parliament as an MP for the Liberals, and a lot of enthusiasm, as you saw in those images behind Adrienne momentarily. Again, Dolly Begum expected to speak in a few minutes' time. We'll try to bring that live to you as we can, but for now, let's go to Sandy Ronaldo's political panel for more on what this majority win means. Sandy.
All right, so Omar, the headline is minority government was engagement, majority is now marriage, and we're in the honeymoon phase. But Nathan, I promised you the first question, and that is, so what are the challenges of being Prime Minister now during this honeymoon period?
Well, in my time in office as Prime Minister, I found that the schedule was the hardest thing, staying fit.
And now for something completely different.
What are the challenges? I do think ego management is going to be a piece of it. I think the anticipation, as Kathleen and others said, about what a majority government and a majority Prime Minister can do are going to be real for Mr. Carney. I think the next little bit is going to be really challenging in terms of telling stories to please people, as some politicians, we like to do at times. But if they end up in conflict, we have mentioned big projects, things like pipelines, keeping Alberta happy, satisfying BC. But Mr. Carney sometimes has a tendency, I've noticed, knowing him for a little while, to tell whoever's in front of him maybe some things they'd like to hear, and then the next group some things they'd like to hear too. Canadians have been very forgiving to this point, but the results are going to matter. And Alberta wants to build a pipeline through the part of the country where I live. Coastal First Nations and others, including the BC government, have said no. At some point, those two things come together, and you either deliver on something you promised one side or you don't. And that's one issue. There are many, many issues. But like many Canadians, I always wish our Prime Minister well, because his success does lead to our country being stronger, regardless of their political stripe.
James, I want to ask you the question that Omar put to Graham, and that is, what would Pierre Poilievre be thinking right now about what's happened?
Well, there'll be a fallout from this, obviously, and an analysis of what this means. The shift in the number in Quebec, right, from 18% to 3 in Terrebonne is one riding. But when ridings get really, really close, voters are smart, and they know that there's a binary choice in front of them. And so third parties typically do fall away. So I don't know that that's necessarily a cascade view across the whole of the province of Quebec. But that aside, I think what the wise thing for both the Prime Minister to do and Mark Carney, and Pierre Poilievre to do, is push away from the table a little bit from the obsession about politics. In my view, look, we talk a little bit too much about politics in this country, not enough, frankly, about policy and culture and where we're going. And we have some real tectonic challenges, right? Because there's a majority government, it looks like, and people can debate about, is this because of the floor crossers or the seats? It doesn't matter. We are where we are. The Liberals have a majority government. And so the Prime Minister needs to focus on the dynamic and the reality that we're probably not going to have an election until 2029. We have huge issues in front of us as a country with regard to productivity, immigration, trade issues with the United States, the future of NATO, the future of Canada's relationship with Europe, what we're going to do with vis-a-vis China. We have massive issues in this country, getting global Canadian products to global markets, huge substantive policy issues. And the Canadian public expects the government of Canada to move forward. With regard to the Conservatives, I think their obligation is to keep an eye on 2029 and think about the next election campaign, how they're going to position themselves, how Mr. Poilievre will position himself and what he wants to present and all that, but focus on being a really important and an effective opposition. The country needs an effective opposition. The governments do better when they have oppositions that are not just oppositional, not obstructionist, but are substantive and thoughtful and principled and a genuine alternative going forward. And Avi Lewis needs to get himself in the Parliament of Canada. He needs to find a way to get himself a seat. Somebody from that caucus needs to step down. They need to have a by-election, and the NDP needs to have a voice in Parliament. I think all these things together, I think good public policy is good politics in the end for the Prime Minister, and good, substantive, principled opposition that is not just focused on politics will, in the fullness of time, be good politics for the Conservative Party. So get back to work. It's a majority government. It is what it is. You can dislike it. accept reality on reality's terms and focus on being a good, effective opposition.
All right, you're itching to say something. I can feel it.
Gosh, it's a shame that, James, you're still not in Parliament. I'd say a few things. This is a majority in the making for a year. It's a heck of a milestone. Majorities are not easy achievements. And it's a majority that has now been...
Explain to the audience why you're saying for a year if an election is not going to happen for another 3 years.
Well, no, it's been a year in the making because a year ago, as we said right off the top, there was a desire to get to a majority and we were, just shy. And I think over the course of the last year, the Prime Minister has demonstrated the kind of thoughtful leadership, principled, pragmatic, that has resonated, and it's drawn members to the fold. And tonight, you've got 3 by-elections where the people had the final say. I think that there is a lot to be taken internal to the world of politics. So there'll be reflections about how the Prime Minister manages the agenda going forward and connecting policy to the average Canadian when it comes to how they pay for food and for fuel and for everything, really. There'll be a reflection for Pierre Poilievre. I mean, the result in Terrebonne is got to be disconcerting if you're a Conservative. I mean, maybe it goes up a little bit, but right now it's hovering at about 2 or 3%. So clearly there's a lack of motivation on the ground there. And so what to take from that? But the really important thing is what does this mean for everybody outside the world of politics? What does it mean for Canadians? And I think this is what's going to start tomorrow, or it's going to continue tomorrow. So how are we helping Canadians pay the bills?
Right.
How are we getting energy to market? How are we reinvigorating the industrial base? And how are we managing that agenda in a way that is less partisan, more bipartisan in the House of Commons so that we get those results? It's a lot. It's not easy, but this is a milestone. And I think everybody should take a moment tonight to recognize that achievement and then get back to work tomorrow. I know what it's like to be in that office first thing in the morning. And I'm quite confident the Prime Minister will have a lot of fire in his belly to keep driving results going forward.
All right, we'll be watching closely. Okay, Omar Vashi.
All right, Sandy, thank you so much. A truly historic night and a milestone. We are at this hour waiting for Dali Begum, who was a Liberal candidate. She has now won that riding in Scarborough Southwest. We'll bring that to you. You're watching a CTV News special, Federal By-Elections 2026. And as we have told you, the Liberals have won 2 by-elections to hit 173 seats, and that gets them enough to form a majority government.
We'll continue tracking results out of Terrebonne and look for more reaction to the big outcome. We'll take a quick break first. More just ahead.
All new Scrubs, Wednesday, 7:30, 10 Central on CTV. Stream next day on Crave.
Que será, será, whatever will be, will be.
He did it again. Yeah.
Oh. You don't know real strength till you've met a
in Canadian politics. I'm Omar Sajadina.
And I'm Vashi Capellos. If you are just joining us, the Liberals have clinched a majority government through 2 by-elections in the Toronto area. They received wins in both of those by-elections, Scarborough Southwest as well as University Rosedale. That puts them from 171 seats to 173 seats. 172 was the magic number they needed to clinch a majority. Whether they are able to get to 174 remains undetermined at this point because we are still awaiting a final outcome in the by-election that's taking place in the Montreal suburb of Terrebonne.
Let's take a look right now at the 2 wins for the Liberals in University Rosedale and Scarborough Southwest. Here is a snapshot in University Rosedale. Danielle Martin at about 12,000 votes, and Dolly Begum has captured that seat, that riding in Scarborough Southwest. We should also add that we are hearing that Dolly Begum will be making her victory speech momentarily in just 2 or 3 minutes, in fact. So we will bring that to you as it happens. And this is the riding we've talked a lot about tonight, Terrebonne, where the Liberal candidate, Tatiana Auguste, has increased her lead somewhat, but still quite a bit narrower than what we've seen in the other 2 Toronto area ridings.
Yeah, still too close to call. Let's get a deeper dive of what information we do have from all of the by-elections that are reporting so far, all the polls reporting so far. Heather Butts and Nick Nanos are here to do just that.
Thank you so much, Vashi. We're going to take a look at one of Nick's favorites, I'm going to call this, Nick, where you always like to see where did everybody go? Where did the vote go? You know, where did things end up? And I really like to see it too because it's a very interesting breakdown. So, Nick, since we've called the 2 ridings in Toronto, let's start in Ontario with those Toronto ridings. We'll look at University Rosedale, and we're looking at the popular vote. And this is a significant shift here, Nick.
Absolutely, Heather. I thought you were going to say the numbers tell a story, right? And the numbers do tell a story on this front. When we look at University of Rosedale, Liberals able to maintain the same level of support, so checkbox for them. But, you know, look at the numbers between the New Democrats and the Conservatives. You know, basically a swap, one up 10, another down 11. You know, the thing is that we can't project this to the whole country, but all the leaders have to take responsibility for what happens in all of these by-elections. And in this particular case, not great numbers for the Conservatives.
Okay, we'll move over to Scarborough Southwest. A similar outplay of the numbers here. Conservatives a little higher here, but still a 13% shift here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, for the good news, at least, is for the Liberals, is that they were able to increase their margin and pick up 9 points. But, you know, same kind of trend we're seeing for the Conservatives, down 13 points, you know, the 13 percentage points. It just speaks to the, what do we say, lower level of motivation for the blue team right now.
And now we'll head over to Terrebonne. We've been talking about it all evening, that vote split between the Liberals and the Bloc Quebecois, and the Conservatives, Nick, quite far down.
Down 15%. But, you know, I think this speaks to the point that the Liberals and the BQ have motivated voters, the organizations are strong, and they're both working hard to deliver their vote.
All right, Nick, thank you. Omar, Vashi, back to you.
All right, Heather, Nick, thank you so much. I want to take you now to the riding of Scarborough Southwest, where Dolly Begum, the Liberal candidate, now winner, is saying her victory speech. Let's listen in.
Tonight, we celebrate something so powerful. Not just this incredible campaign, but a community coming together, putting aside their differences to choose hope, compassion, and progress. Tonight, we celebrate a new beginning. Over the last 2 months, hundreds of you from every corner of our beautiful riding and beyond came together to knock on doors, make phone calls, and sometimes canvass in the freezing rain to connect with families and neighbors across Scarborough Southwest. To each and every single one of you, thank you. To each and every single one of you who worked tirelessly over the last 2 months, from the bottom of my heart, I say thank you. Thank you for your positive energy, for your patience, and for your big smiles. Shabash! Shabash to all of you. I stand here tonight deeply humbled and honored by the love and kindness you have shown me. Thank you to my friend and my brother and now colleague who was just here. Let's give it up for our Minister of Public Safety, Gary Ananda Sangri. Folks, there are people and there are leaders who show up day in, day out without taking the credit they deserve. Yet they make the greatest of impact in our lives. And Gary is one of those people. My friend, Scarborough is lucky to have you, and Canada is lucky to have you. To my campaign team, Duncan and Chris, the East End boys who came back from Ottawa to run our campaign. I am so grateful for your leadership, your dedication, and your immeasurable patience. Your positivity, creating a safe space, welcoming space for every volunteer who walked through our doors. And to Christina, David, Fazulbai, Fayaz, Gavin, Evan, Edward, Max, Adnan, Aisha, Nahidapu, Dalton, and every single one of you who I wish I could name tonight, who showed up, rain or shine, to do the tough work, to do the hard work. I am so proud of each and every single one of you, and I'm so proud of what we've accomplished together. Thank you. To my parents, my
All right, you're listening live to Dolly Begum, who was deputy leader of the Ontario NDP, but who will now be going to Ottawa as a Liberal MP for the riding of Scarborough Southwest. This, of course, was a riding that used to be represented by Bill Blair, who had a number of cabinet portfolios, including Minister of Defence. We know that he is now Canada's High Commissioner to the UK. And here's a snapshot of what it looks like in her riding right now. Most of those polls have reported 145 of the 188. And Dolly Begum there with a sizable lead of just over 11,000 votes, which is why we've been able to project her as the winner. And you heard her deliver her victory speech moments ago. This is the snapshot in University Rosedale, where Danielle Martin has also won a seat by a sizable majority there, just over 9,000 votes in that riding. And the riding that we have not been able to call right now, Elections Canada has said that this could be a very long night. The Liberal incumbent who won last year by a single vote has right now a 522 vote lead. So still things there very, very tight.
All right. And just getting into my inbox, actually, a statement from the leader of the Conservatives on the outcome of tonight's by-elections and the fact that the Liberals are now forming a majority government. Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the party, writes, the Carney Liberals did not win a majority government through a general election or today's by-elections. Instead, it was won through backroom deals with politicians who betrayed the people who voted for them. While the Prime Minister spent the year on this cynical power grab, he has doubled the deficit and given Canada the worst grocery prices and housing costs in the G7. Liberals expect Canadians to give up. The statement goes on to say, get complacent and go away so Carney can have total power without any accountability. That will not happen. Our country and its people are worth fighting for. We will continue to fight for people to afford homes, food, and fuel. And the statement goes on to talk more about Kathleen, Shakir, and Scott, what he intends to do, what the party intends to do as opposition. What do you make of that statement, Kathleen?
True to type. Sounds like older messaging, not the more current messaging you've seen more recently that's been softer, that's been more welcoming, that you've heard from him on the podcast or other part of his media charm offensive. I'm surprised. I think on election night, it's a moment to be a bit more magnanimous and to go back to the majority by stealth line seems, that he wants to keep the frame that Carney has crafted this majority that is undemocratic and opportunistic, and he's not going to move off of that. I don't think that's going to appeal to the Canadian voters who, frankly, are saying tonight that they want this kind of stability, that they're willing to give the stability to Carney.
I think it probably appeals to people who support Pierre Poilievre, though, Shakir. That'd be my guess. I know that I hear from many of them who are upset about the idea of floor crossing leading to this. But to Kathleen's point, does it appeal to a broader swath?
That's what I mean. You need more than the people that just appeal to Pierre right now. You got to broaden that tent. And so how are you getting in that direction? I think at the end of the day, whether or not you like how they got the majority, if you're a Canadian, you want the Prime Minister to succeed, right? Because when he succeeds, Canada does well, and everybody wants to see that happening. I think moving forward, the thing that I take away from this is that now that they have a majority, there really can't be much finger pointing anymore. I see Minister McKinnon on your show quite often talk about obstructionist opposition. That's no longer the issue, right? You hear a lot of liberals say that.
Talk about?
You have a lot of liberals who say Mark Carney's not a guy who likes to campaign, he likes to govern. Well, now's your time to govern. This is your government. And what we said this entire panel, we need to see results moving forward. I think that's where we are right now. But all the backroom deal stuff, I think that's just not a winning message in my opinion.
I imagine they felt like they had to make it. And to be fair, the NDP, Scott, is making that message and was making it all day. Their new leader, Avi Lewis, was saying today, you know, this is essentially not what voters wanted a year ago when they elected a minority government. My guess is they also, both parties move on now to focusing on what they're going to oppose.
The ball is dropped. It's New Year's. Okay, so you got to make a change.
Are we getting divorced, married, engaged? What's happening?
Oh, let's drop that damn metaphor. If we're going to go into counseling, how about that? If Pierre Poilievre sounds bitter in that statement, I think it's because he probably is. And I'm struck by something that I remember from 1 year ago, and that was he said, "This is victory delayed, not denied. It took Stephen Harper 2 steps to get into government. That's the path we will follow." Well, his prediction was right in a way. This is now the second step toward a majority 1 year later, but it wasn't his path. It was Mark Carney's. That's got to be a very difficult pill to swallow. And even if you want to linger on the issue of floor crossers, that itself is a reminder that he couldn't keep his caucus members. So I think at some point he's got to stop talking about why he's losing and focus on how he can win. And I don't know that he has as much time as he might imagine.
So the Prime Minister is also reacting, Omar.
I'm just looking right now on social media, and we can pull that up right now, reacting to the Liberal wins in University of Rosedale. And he wrote on social media, "Congratulations to Danielle Martin, the newest member of Parliament for University of Rosedale. Danielle has spent her career building better public health care for Torontonians and all Canadians, and now she is bringing her experience and determination to the House of Commons, and our country will be stronger for it." He's also congratulated Dolly Begum on her election as the new member of Parliament for Scarborough Southwest. He wrote a similar message. "Dolly has fought fiercely and effectively to build a better future for her community, and her tireless voice and experience will help build a stronger and more just Canada for all." And you can see there on your screen the results in that riding of Scarborough Southwest, and Dolly Begum there with a healthy lead, almost 12,000 votes over her opponent.
So I'm looking to hear the statement on the majority. It was certainly interesting to hear his comments there on each of the by-elections, but I mostly want to hear a statement about that. And if not tonight, then we do know that the Prime Minister is going to be talking tomorrow, making an announcement around affordability and something to do with gas prices. So I do anticipate that the majority of the questions there will be about the majority. Let's swing over to Heather Butts and Nick Nanos for more on the question of leadership.
Leadership, Vashi, thank you so much, as well as where people stand right now in Quebec. Nick, we've been talking so much this evening about Terrebonne. It is in the Montreal area, and there has been a significant shift there. We've been talking all night about the change in issues from the last election moving forward to this spring. Walk us through some of your projections in that area.
You know, it's interesting, Heather, these are the results of the 2025 election, and you can see the bloc in blue doing very well outside in the greater Montreal area, and not a big surprise, the island of Montreal, with the exception of one riding, kind of 2 ridings, rock solid. And but the key takeaway, bloc doing very well, kind of clustered around Montreal. But when we fast forward to the seat modeling that Nanos does, and we do seat projections every month, and black shows that the riding is too close to call, and when it's red or another color, you can see that it's been declared. And this is why tonight is actually critical for the leader of the Bloc Quebecois, Blanchet. The fact of the matter is that he really needs to win this riding. The Bloc support has been dropping in Quebec. The Liberal support is up. And this could be, if he doesn't win tonight, it could be a harbinger of bad news, because there are other seats in Quebec that are in play and are toss-up that the Bloc have been able to hold. That's going to be another story potentially tonight, whether he makes it through and holds on to the riding or loses it, and it's just the canary in the coal mine, so to speak, in terms of other stuff that he has to worry about.
Okay, Nick, let's take a look then at Blanchet and his leadership. What would be the significant issue here that has really driven this change?
Well, you know, the thing is that the fortunes of the federal parties, the Bloc Quebecois and the Liberals, have really, in the last 4 weeks, mirrored a lot of the changes that have been happening provincially. You know, the Parti Québécois was high up in the polls, and it looked like they were cruising to victory. And that what we saw is that that number dropped, and the provincial Liberals improved. We've also seen the same thing happen federally. So the thing is will the fortunes of Blanchet follow the fortunes of the Parti Québécois? And what will that mean for his future as the leader of the party, depending on what happens tonight?
Okay, Nick, thank you so much. Omar and Bashi, back to you.
All right, Heather and Nick, thank you so much. Let's head over to Sandy Rinaldo's political panel. Again, a very historic night and a significant milestone tonight. But as we've been mentioning, Sandy, now the real work begins.
It does, Omar. And I have to ask James this question as a big C conservative. When you hear Pierre Poilievre saying Carney won this election, Mark Carney through backroom deals, power without accountability, and Scott says he sounds bitter. Do you agree?
Sure, but look, it's fair to argue these are three ridings the Liberals won last year and they didn't get a majority. There were 5 floor crossers. Now they have a majority. That's true. But again, it doesn't really matter, does it? We are where we are. The dynamic of the Parliament of Canada is 174 seats. That's a majority parliament. It's still a fragile majority, by the way. You can still have some people depart, leave to provincial politics or some other circumstance. So it's still a fragile majority, but it's a majority. I think Mr. Poilievre, the Conservatives, I think they need to take a step back, recast, re-engage, and say, look, Canadians have spoken. They clearly aspire for comfort of a majority government. And they found it in Mr. Carney for different reasons. Some of them we believe in, some of them we don't, but it kind of doesn't matter. During COVID, during the 2008 global recession, and even now as a consequence of Donald Trump and the dynamics of the Canadian economy, the future of trade, the future of NATO, Canadians see instability everywhere, and they're looking for stability, and they have found it in Mr. Carney and giving him a majority government. Right. And he's earned this. So congratulations to him on that. But we are going to be a forceful, thoughtful, substantive opposition, and we're going to prepare ourselves to give Canadians not just one, but 2 choices of a majority government in the next campaign to take this country past Donald Trump and into the future. There is a future where Donald Trump is not the president. There is a future where the crisis of today is gone, and the issues that Canadians are dealing with will be refreshed, and they will aspire for new leadership. That's where the Conservatives is to look to the horizon, look to 2029. Don't look to tomorrow's soundbite. Don't look to tomorrow's podcast. Don't look to the next polls. Look to 2029. Your job as the opposition to be thoughtful and substantive and to prepare yourself for 2029 in a world that is post-Donald Trump. They need to do that. Stop being bitter about what happened. Move past Michael Maugh, move past Marilyn Gladue, move past tonight, and reframe the party as a party that's ready for 2029.
I wonder if Pierre Poilievre is listening to you.
I think if they don't do that, then they'll be stuck in this internal drama, and I think it's gonna. And I think that takes you nowhere.
Nathan, you know, the NDP are also saying this isn't what voters wanted a year ago. So combine that with the comments from Pierre Poilievre.
Well, I'll tack a little bit onto what James said, and I know he's not interested in the job, but that sounded like a great stump speech right there. I found it. It doesn't have to all be about floor crossing. Someone can actually have a position that's tenable and not be a part of the Liberal Party. True fact. But I think it's saying a lot more about where Pierre Poilievre is at than it is where Mr. Carney is at. I think there is bitterness in the tone. I think it's missing the night. Both things are true. The Liberals did well in the by-elections, and they achieved their majority through that, plus 5 floor crossers. Those are both true. I actually think how the opposition reacts to this is going to be very interesting as well. Now the threat of an election is gone, somewhat. I think Mr. Carney would like to go early. And how the opposition describes themselves. The NDP took such hits, as you know, in the last election from having, quote unquote, propped up the Liberals. That's all gone now, too. Yeah. So I'm looking for Avi to step into a very, very pragmatic place around issues that matter to Canadians, particularly cost of living and those kinds of things, with some solutions on the table, which he's already doing. and free up your hands a little bit, because there isn't what Jagmeet was burdened by, or chose to be burdened by, which was continuing to support the Liberals while criticizing, which was confusing for voters in the end.
Okay, final word to the Liberal.
Yeah, just very briefly, I mean, what James said with regards to Mr. Poilievre, I think he should listen to James. But with regards to what it means for Liberals tonight, obviously, two very solid results in Toronto. We're going to continue to watch Terrebonne, although it looks like it's continuing to trend in the right direction. And if so, it would be one of the best, if not the best, turnouts for the Liberal Party in that riding since 1980, and obviously a really terrible and tough result for the Conservatives there. I just want to conclude by saying a few words for the local candidates. And as somebody who's gone through it, it's fun to watch election night on this side of the camera. It's a little bit more suspenseful on the other side. And that's why I think it's important to just give a shout out, not only to the candidates from all parties who put their name on the ballot, and to give a shout out to the volunteers, to the people who work day and night, who are still, eyes glued to this television because they care about the arena. And I think that, to me, is perhaps the most important observation. It's the moment that we find ourselves in as Canadians means that politics matter. And partisanship matters too, but maybe it matters a little less right now. And if we can be a little more unified coming out of these by-elections and start tomorrow or continue tomorrow with the same urgency we've seen the last year, then that'll drive the country forward.
Very insightful to talk to the three of you. And my takeaway is conciliation. We work together on all of this.
Scott's got like a discount on the therapy, so.
Oh no! Oh no! I'm glad I didn't make that joke. Yeah. That's the reddest I've ever seen Scott get. Yeah. Wow. All right. Thanks, Sandy. Thanks so much. And we're here, of course, with Ottawa Bureau Chief Graham Richardson. Graham, what's your takeaway tonight?
Two big stories, right? The majority, obviously. I'm watching Terrebonne very, very closely. It appears that the gap is holding. We are at, according to Elections Canada and our results as well, like 65% of the polls reporting. That's a big sample. So the Conservative vote collapsed there. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here, but, Quebecers respond to stars. So is this the star of Mark Carney punching through in a place like others have said that he really shouldn't punch through? We heard from Liberals tonight, and I spoke to people that, oh, we don't expect to win this. And I think Scott and others quite rightly pointed out that maybe we're getting spun here. They're just trying to, tamp down expectations. So if this holds, huge night, 3 for 3. And yes, hard work begins tomorrow, but a very, very significant situation for the Parliament and for the country, really, where we're going.
What did you make of Pierre Poilievre's statement earlier this evening, and the fact that it was not sort of the softer Poilievre that we've seen? I believe Kathleen made that point.
Well, he's being himself, right? He's being himself. He doesn't believe, he thinks that this has been cooked in the back rooms, and he's keeping that. And I think we're going to keep hearing that from him over and over and over again. And I think there is an anger in Conservative land about a whole bunch of things. I think we forget how close they were to government, right? How close they were. We talk about the turnaround for the Liberals. Like, we had, people were gaming cabinet ministers from the opposition benches. And that's really, really hard to get to and then to lose. And so I think there's still some of that in him, despite the fact that they're making progress with apparently what he needs to do to turn things around.
But to compound that, it's like you went from measuring the drapes to losing the election to now, watching a majority government form in the course of 18 months. That's not easy.
It's not easy. The people in this room know better than I do. The hardest thing to do is lead a party, let alone a government, in this system as a leader. And I think Pierre Poilievre is finding that out the hard way. And we'll see if he can hold on if there are more floor crossers, if that changes things for him, or if he repairs, he rebuilds, just like people wrote off the Liberal Party. Maybe we're not going to write off the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre.
Harper did it in 2004.
Exactly.
Well, and the big question is, how much time does he have to be able to turn this around, right? That is no small task, as we've been talking about this evening. All right, well, there you have it. A historic night in politics. Canadians in 2 ridings have spoken, and after some help from recent floor crossers, it is enough for the Liberals to form a majority government. Danielle Martin won University Rosedale, Chrysler Freeland's old riding, and Dolly Begum winning Bill Blair's old riding of Scarborough Southwest. We are still waiting at this hour for results in Terrebonne, and that could widen the lead in the House of Commons.
But those 2 wins in Liberal strongholds mean it is the first majority government in 11 years. It is a big deal. It's a big moment in Canadian politics. It's a slim majority, yes, of just 173 seats. 172 is the magic number that catapults a government into majority territory. And that means there are big questions that remain. How powerful a majority will it be? What are they going to do with it? Are there going to be more floor crossers? Will there be other Liberals that leave for diplomatic posts? And what does it mean about the possibility of a general election in the future, or the leadership, as we were just discussing, of some of the opposition parties? Keep it right here on CTV News Channel, because we've got more coverage ahead. It's been a true pleasure to be with you tonight. Thank you to everyone here on set.
Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening.